Okay. Technology is wonderful. I was told to start from the beginning again, so I will call this meeting to order and welcome those that are with us tonight and watching home. And technology is wonderful. I was told to start from the beginning again, so I will call this meeting to order and welcome those to. That sounds familiar. Are we okay to keep going? Okay, so we'll go right to Jenna Lynn. Sorry about that. We'll begin with a poem from our poet laureate, Jenna Lynn Albert.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's Pride Week in New Brunswick, and it looks very different from former Pride Weeks. Oh, someone's phone's ringing. Sorry. It's Pride Week in New Brunswick, and it looks very different from how prior Pride Weeks have gone. A lot of events are taking place virtually. And in Fredericton, we lost Boom Nightclub, a staple of the queer community here. With COVID-19, it could have felt depressing, despairing, like we were separated from one another. But the LGBTQIA2S+ community in Fredericton, across New Brunswick, has gathered together and, if anything, has shown how strong our community is. This evening, I'll be reading a poem by Rebecca Salazar, who is the author of The Knife That Justifies the Wound and Guzzle. Recent publications include poetry and nonfiction in Briarpatch, Manila Review, and The Puritan. Rebecca is currently a poetry editor for The Fiddlehead and Plenitude magazines, a PhD candidate at the University of New Brunswick, and is also one of the founders of BIPOC Pride. And this poem is called Gift. 1. Child-sized and genderless and hidden under tables, blanket forts, a secret bigger than the whole world. I was an initiate, a novice, sweaty-palmed, ungenitaled until the press of pink on pink. You have to do it with us. Little hand I gave to pledge plunged into pink fruit of the loom, unready, never tried to fight. 2. This time, fear. This time, premature pubescence. This time, boy hands do not ask for invitation. This time, breasts mean readiness. This time, she looks so much older. This time, locker room talk. This time, it burns. 5th grade, hand broad. This time, hot coals through clothes. No, this time, chanted. No, writhed. 3. Foresee the hatchet by the bedside. Death threat. The rack of bones for telling what my body was to be. I know I should have known. It suffocates and breaks. Dim gaslit body levitates. Gibbers and tongues like Delphi's oracle. 4. Projection. This the ritual of protection. Astral parts thrust out of body. It's a sacred art. Sex rendered ectoplasmic, spools of cloth uncoiling smoke-like from the mouth. Ours was a fabricated love, and I was false across the bed. I left burnt poplar bark and sifted yarrow seeds, then left my body. It's a gift. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenna Lynn. And last Friday at 1 o'clock, had the honor of raising the Pride flag and flags with a small but enthusiastic group of supporters and participants for the local Fierté Proud, Fredericton Proud efforts. And as I say, it is a different week for everybody this year because it's all virtual, but it's underway as we speak. And they had a fantastic list of events and by the organizers have it all put together. And uniquely, Fredericton, St. John, and Moncton all combined efforts this year. And the flag was raised at 12 at St. John and 12:30 in Moncton and 1 o'clock here. So it's another way that everybody can come together in the province, even at a time when we're all supposed to keep physically distant. So good luck to everybody in Pride Week this week. City Clerk, approval of agenda.
Thank you, Thank you, Your Worship. We have two additional items this evening. 5.3 Liberty Gas Municipal Operating Agreement and Canadian Medical Association Foundation Grant.
Yes, Councillor Erickson.
I don't know if I need to make a separate movement to add this to the agenda, but I'd like to see items 7.1 and 7.2 reversed in order. I think for symbolic reasons especially, it's important for us to put staff first here.
We can do that. 7.1 and 7.2 be reversed in order. Okay. That be moved by Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Chase. All in favor of the agenda? Against? Motion is carried. Oh, sorry, Councillor Chase.
Thanks, Your Worship. I did have a question about the consent agenda.
Yes.
And having the discussion on the Odell and Clarity Park plans. I
Mhm.
just wanted to get clarification that there's provision to do that.
Yes, we're going to do that on the another couple of bullets. We'd ask if anybody wanted to have an item removed, and I'll turn to you on that one. Okay. Does anybody have a conflict of interest to declare on any of the items tonight? I do. On item 8.3, I'll be declaring a conflict on that and asking the deputy mayor to take my place. Councillor McGarity.
Your Worship, can we pull 5.4, talk about that? Oh, it is?
5.4.
Yes.
Yeah, we can pull it and vote, or do you just want to talk to it when
I'd like
we?
to talk to him.
Okay, fair enough. So the consent agenda is, we will pull item 5.2, Councillor Chase, and have a discussion and vote on that.
Yes, please.
Okay, that'll be done. And we'll have a discussion on 5.4. So it'll be moved by Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that the consent agenda consists of item 5.1, 5.3, 5.4. And on the question, we will turn first to item 5.4. Councillor McGarry, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I do, Your Worship. Look, I really want to thank the Canadian Medical Association for what they're doing and reacting very quickly on vulnerable people. Not here within our community, but a lot of communities. It's with the uncertainty surrounding COVID-19, the virus situation, I really want to thank the CMA, the Canadian Medical Association, for the generous donation. During times of crisis, the less fortunate and vulnerable are sometimes left to fend for themselves with little or no support. This funding will help continue that conversation in our city. And again, I want to thank them very much for that wonderful gift. But I'd like to ask Council for further consideration. And I knowing that the funding from the CMA is pointed at vulnerable homeless persons, which is very critical. But this is only one segment of the vulnerable persons. We have seniors in our homes that are vulnerable, as well as youth at risk in the community. We have people who are working and are vulnerable due to mental health issues and addiction problems. With this current COVID virus situation, has spawned many vulnerabilities, and people who had jobs now are worried if their job is there at all. Also, too, is business owners that have businesses. Some work on very slim margins. There's a lot of worry out there. Whether their business will be back. Now we're in jeopardy. Landlords that had full tenancy now wonder about empty buildings. Will their businesses come back? I know that our Ignite Fredericton, our economic development arm, is in talks with businesses and associations. But what we need to do is make some sort of public conversations. Now more than ever before, we need to assure residents that work is ongoing in dealing with this new reality, and it certainly is a new reality. With our partners, the province and federal governments, now more than ever before, need to work on a suitable way forward, a sustainable way forward. I think this council really needs to get some considerable concentrated discussions and thoughts on this. So look, I'm sorry I delineated that way, and it started out as a thank you gift to CMA. I'm still very positive about that, but I thought this wonderful gift was an opportunity. It might be a catalyst on a discourse on this topic. And it's not all doom and gloom, far from it, but we really need to have that discussion. So I'll leave it there, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McGarity. So all those in favor of the consent agenda? All those against? The motion is carried. And we'll go to item 5.2, which we pulled from that. We'll have a discussion on that now, and which is the Odell Park Management Plan, Killarney Lake Management Plan. And I'll turn to Councillor Malay to start.
Thank you, Worship. I believe the process that started a few years ago clearly showed the passion and the love that the citizens of Franklin have for their green space and the two large parks that we have in the city. Odell Park is one of the greatest urban parks in Canada and definitely one of the greatest assets in the city. As we continue to grow, I think it was important for us to provide a guiding document to council, staff, the users, and the public in general. And I honestly believe that those two plans does just that. Any future decision regarding the park needs to be made first and foremost with a lens to protect the ecology of the park. The major change between this version of the plan and the last draft is mainly clarity on specific points. For example, the use of asphalt that caused some concerns will be reserved to paved trails that are already paved, and like we can see near the lodge. That was the intent all along. I think there's that clarification and came a long way, and because it did cause a lot of confusion on the last draft. I know there's some specific question too from council on some of the information that's out there, and Ken will be willing to answer some of those specific questions as soon as I'm done. There's also a lot of concerns about the potential loss of trails, but the majority of those trails consist of unsanctioned trails and will need to be reviewed. The proposed trail network favors routes that minimizes natural disturbance. Over time, trail types within sensitive ecological areas will be redesigned to have lower impacts on their immediate landscape. New trails will be designed with the expertise of staff, trail designers, user groups, ecologists, to ensure the integrity of natural systems are preserved. Note the commitment from staff to work with user group and experts when will come time to decommission and create new trails. I would see the importance of including a vast diversity of user groups and experts. In my 4 year on council, I now understand that there's no such thing as a perfect plan. But in my opinion, this plan comes close to it. I want to give praise to staff for their intensive consultation process, including surveys, public house, workshops, meetings with different groups, and their commitment to continue the engagement in the future. The level of details found in this plan regarding the preservation of the environment in an urban park is second to none. And I'm highly confident that the plans in place in front of us tonight will solve a lot of issues that would have be created as we see more and more users enjoying our parks in the future. That being said, a proper implementation and sufficient resources allocated by council to our parks in the future will be important to provide a safe and inclusive environment for everyone to enjoy. So on that note, I'll move the recommendation. And if there's any questions for Ken, I know he's willing to answer those questions.
Thank you, Councillor Malay, and I'll ask Councillor Erickson if he'd be the seconder on that. And on the question, Councillor McDermott. Oh, okay. I thought I saw your hand up.
No, you did. I wasn't expecting to be the first one
Oh, okay.
acknowledged on that. Look, there've been a number of, we've had a lot of emails on this. I think there are a lot of questions out there, and I have questions that I want answering. I think we're at least confirmation for. I think one of them, and I'll leave it to the rest of my colleagues to get deeper into it, is there's a number floating around of $900,000 that's being spent on mountain bike trails. And I have no idea where that number comes from. It appeared on social media. I've asked people about it, and they've given it as sort of that's the number. So I don't know where that number came from, and maybe Ken can answer that question.
Ken Forrest.
Your Worship, that amount was indicated on page 53 of the May draft of the document, where there was some order of magnitude costing assigned to various things that might happen over the 30-year life of the plan. And there was a range there of $600,000 to $900,000 of order of magnitude costing that would be split over, it would be very small incremental work, largely done by in-house resources over a very long period of time. I know there has been some public comment as well that's assigning that exclusively to kind of mountain bike trails, but I want to be very clear that when we're talking about single track trails, it's not just mountain bikers that would be able to enjoy the use of those trails. All of the trails in our park systems are multi-use trails. Those would be available for trail runners. They would be available for walkers. So those trails, they take a different format than our wider crusher dust infrastructure, but they provide a unique environment that's available to a number of different users. So there's a misapprehension or a misunderstanding in recent public conversation about the plan that the benefit of that investment is restricted only to mountain bikers, and I want to clear that up.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Look, I'm not going to ask any other questions, but I would reserve the right to actually make a comment once we've had a conversation.
Okay. Yeah, be careful. Our normal procedure here is everybody gets to speak once.
Yeah, but at the discretion of the chair, you can continue.
It can be
that.
the discretion of the
So
chair.
I'll
Okay.
leave it up to the discretion of the
Okay.
chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chase.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm going to speak to, some of the, thoughts that have been shared, through social media in the last few days. And, first of all, Odell Park, even though it's a regional park, it lies entirely within Ward 9. And there's a lot of people that live around the periphery that are regular park users. And also from my own perspective, I've been using the Odell Park since I was probably 3 years old. And that's more than a couple of years ago. And it ranges over a time where, I knew just about every nook and cranny of Odell Park as an orienteer. But I've watched with interest the passion, the people who come to this issue. And I think, first of all, Odell Park is not a large park. We think of it as a large park in woods, but it is not a large park. In fact, it's only a fraction of what Killarney Park is. It's also heavily used by multiple user groups, and all the users are important, and every one of them loves the park. There's no question. Everybody loves Odell Park, but it has been at some risk of being loved to death. And I think that's the intent of the plan is, it's a good piece of work. The plans are much needed and long overdue. Like, we've been waiting over 2 years to get these plans to the table. And I think staff have done a good job of capturing the challenges and how we can address them. And, I really want to thank all of the people that have taken time to input the plan through the public consultations or, emails and so on. One of the themes that has come up, though, in the last few days is the various users other than the mountain bike element. And that is the families, the walkers, the trail runners, the bird watchers, the people that just love to get out and enjoy nature. And they really want to be able to do it without fear of safety. And there is a theme, safety theme, that has come forward through the public consultations, particularly in the use of the single track trails, where people are using those trails, walking, and really it has been called competition for the use of the trails, but it's really reflected in the safety. So I believe very firmly that the people that are going to use the park should be able to do so without fear for their safety. As we go forward, we need to deal effectively in ensuring that they're safe, the uses of Odell Park are safe, particularly in the cities involved more heavily in the design of trails and so on. We need to develop Odell Park as a safe place for all user groups. In the past, I've openly expressed my concern with the unsanctioned bike trails. My concern is not only the significant ecological damage that many of these trails done, but the fact that they really represent a sign of disrespect, for city property. And I understand why people, like to use these trails, like to create them, but it is public land. And we are entitled to, clear respect. So if in the spirit of partnership, this evidenced by recent weeks, we can bring about a solution and a spirit of cooperation, I think it all the better in the creation of better trails. And that said, I think it's very important that any of the trails that we do create meet a standard, and there are very high standards for these trails that a lot of these unsanctioned trails don't meet at the current time. I think another matter that I'm deeply concerned with that's not touched on in the report is the elimination of the camping, campfires, and drug use in certain parts of the park. Staff do routinely, and I'll say maybe monthly or a couple of times a month, have to go up and clean up a campsite. And there are fire pits that have been used in the park. And I think we're just purely lucky that a forest fire hasn't broken out. That is going to lead to the comments that or the recommendations that I'd like to see as we enter into development of this park plan. We need to acknowledge a clear need for greater oversight and active management of Odell Park and also Killarney Park. And I propose 3 improvements to our park management process that would help improve the integrity of the parks and user safety. First one is that these parks are extremely important to the people of Fredericton and deserving of serious support. I don't think Odell Park, for example, has enjoyed the serious level of support that people really expect. I think we could do a lot better. And I say this with all due respect to staff, but this park needs the higher profile than what's possible within the engineering and operations department. In my view, we need to strengthen the park profile within the city structure to better match the citizen expectations of what we're expected to deliver in parks like Odell, Killarney Park, and others. And I don't think it's getting it within the current regime that we have. Secondly, I think we need to dedicate more full-time staff to each park, but in particular Odell Park. And I think having somebody on site, who can make sure that things are being done and that people are observing park rules as they should, and can check up on these illegal campsites and other things. I think it's extremely important and a good investment on the part of the city. So I would like to see something done in that regard. And I'm almost done. Okay. And thirdly, I suggest the creation of a park user committee could serve as an expert referee for policy and management issues as it pertains to Odell Park and possibly Killarney Park. And I see this as somewhat similar to the library board or other reference panels where the committee would be composed of respected citizens who represent the several user interests, bikers, hikers, trail runners, passive users, and so on. And that this creation of a reference panel would significantly improve collaboration and mutual respect among the user groups. And I think that's vitally important, that the user groups develop collaboration and support among themselves. It's not just the user groups with the city developing the collaboration. I think they need to develop collaboration and support among themselves if we're going to be really successful. And I think this recommendation conforms to what staff have presented in the administrative report. So those are the 3 recommendations I have. I think we've done our consultation. I think moving forward is going to become extremely important to do so carefully and in a way that ensures that Odell Park is a resource well into the future for future generations. So Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Chase. And next would be Councillor Dara. Oh, no, I thought, sorry. We'll move on to Councillor McGarity.
Thank you, Worship. Look, I gave this great thought over the weekend, and knowing some of the information contained on the many emails that we all got. You know, our role of our parks is becoming more important. They're critical public service infrastructure and an essential part of our community social fabric. You know, no one can deny that. Our park system is a collection of spaces that play a critical role in the delivery, the facilitation, and the contribution of culture, recreation, community development, heritage, economic development, education, natural environment, and above all, health and wellness. So when you think about parks are key component of our community and of what determines what our city is and what it will be in the future. We must consider all these roles when developing our parks. This is essential. Defines our future. Provide the right mix of components, features, amenities in our parks is challenging, to say the least. We need to understand the role and benefits of parks when considering specific design elements and how to incorporate them into the parks. This gets rather complicated and controversial at times, especially when we're talking about an old park like Odell Park. That's a gem, as far as I'm concerned, in parks across Canada. Designing the right mix of amenities in the park is, again, no easy task. It is important to consider our parks as a whole in order to realistically accomplish all the roles our parks play in the development of our community now and back into the future. And some of the things I was up there Saturday and I was looking at some of these unauthorized trails, and I'm amazed that how these trails, some very close to some water course, were built. I mean, that's pretty brazen. I don't think anybody has a right to go into any of our parks and do some of that construction work. I mean, that should be left to our city staff, who are keepers of our parks. So I think we should immediately send our staff in there and clean that up, because what I've seen, it's just not right. I mean, it's just we have some old growth trees there, and I think it's a little bit disrespectful. You know, we have a Killarney Park, and you know, it's a newer park, and a lot of those activities could be shifted there. It's a huge park, and I think a lot of those activities could be there. The only thing about Killarney Park would be I know a lot of people use the ring, that trail that rings the lake for walking. I think we should keep that and try to encourage that for the wellness side of it. Other than that, there's plenty of room to do a lot of different activities there. It's more of an activity park. But when you come to Odell, it's more of a passion, health center for people that just want to get away from the busy part of the city and take in some fresh air and some meditate. I really don't want to go on. And I think Councillor Chase covered a lot of good points there. You know, the consultants have done their job. We asked them to do the job. They've done the job. They set the table for us. They put the pieces and the possibilities on that table. Our job is going forward, and it's a plan. You know, plans change over time. This is a 25-year plan. So I dare say by the end of 25 years, they'll be quite different. You know, it's up to us to decide what pieces and possibilities remain on that table. If we have a park without a plan, things like this happen. People go in there and do things. There is no plan going forward. This plan has some good elements to it, but I'm really concerned if that type of biking activity and it's growing, will even get bigger and maybe more damage will be done parts of that park. So I'm very leery about that. But, you know, overall, this is a good plan. But I mean, over the next few years, I think council has to be very vigilant on what we do, especially with Odell Park, not so much with Clarny. So I'm looking at the motion there, and I see that the back half of it, be it further resolved that the chief administrative officer be directed to designate departmental and staff responsibility for implementing the park plans. I think maybe any of the work that they plan to do should come back to council just because of the nature of, especially on Odell Park. So maybe we should amend that to say that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGarity. Councillor Grandy.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I want to commend the Chair of Community Services for all of the hard work in formulating this plan and going through this the scenarios and the engagement and as well as updating council. If you were there at Community Services, you would have heard a much more in-depth report. Some of the comments the council have made were addressed during that briefing from staff. So I'm not sure where those comments are coming from, but that was at Community Services, and that those plans were, this plan was formulated heavily in there. My question is to Mr. Forrest on this. Mr. Forrest, can you perhaps take us through, first of all, the public engagement that was done? We have a lot of emails telling us that people weren't engaged and everything. I'd like to understand, not comprehensively, but just an overview of that engagement process to address those concerns. You've already talked about the $900,000 that Council McDermott asked about, which is reasonable over a 30-year period, and people took that and brought it out as a $900,000 spend tomorrow on this going forward. And then I'd like you to address what seems to be this theory that we're going to go in and cut hemlocks and other trees down to make bike trails and other things. Can you just maybe comment on these particular things that were outlined in this massive amount of emails that we've gotten recently? Thank you. Mr. Forrest.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll do my best to provide a very brief summary of what was a very significant public consultation process. So, you know, as council knows, this process has been ongoing for a very long time. It was stalled for a point in time when we had to attend to other matters, but you know, essentially about a 2.5, 3 year process to get to where we are today. Killarney and Odell were viewed together in the sense that they function as regional parks, and there's a role for those parks to play to kind of relieve pressure between one another, as well as trying to do the best thing in those parks individually. So it was a very significant undertaking dealing with our two most important regional level parks. There was extensive resident survey done as part of the planning process, and council will recall in previous presentations that there were over 700 responses to those surveys that were sent to residents over the course of the planning process. So very broad engagement in terms of seeking opinion, not just from user groups, but also from individuals, to try and make sure that we cast a very broad net to try and get a good understanding of people's relationships with both of those parks. So 700 responses to resident surveys. There were a series of focused community conversations that took place, and my colleague Julie Baker was very heavily involved in those with some of the consultant resources that we use. So those were conversations that took place with various communities of interest and individuals with respect to the parks, and those were a more informal conversation type setting where we were able to talk through some of the issues in the parks. There were a series of workshops, public workshops held as part of the planning process as well. There were over 300 participants in those workshops that took place over the course of the planning process. And finally, there was an open house as the process kind of started to move towards conclusion, and there were over 200 people involved in those open house sessions. So as you can see, there was a very significant level of engagement in various different types of formats, precisely to try and make sure we got that broad representation of citizen interest to make sure that we have the best plans possible for the future of those parks. I'll remind council that in February, we brought forward drafts, final drafts of the planning documents. And in conversation with council, there was a decision to undertake a further citizen engagement before conclusion of the planning process. So despite the fact we've done all that previous engagement, there was a final draft, there was a decision to provide another opportunity for input with respect to the draft planning documents. And I know council has got a lot of emails in the last, 72 to 96 hours with respect to these plans, but I'll remind council that there was an engagement period back in February where the city received over 230 responses from citizens with respect to these two park plans. So, there was a very broad level of engagement and, the engagement was very much targeted to try and make sure that we were balancing the ecological considerations of those two important regional park assets with the need for recreation and human use of those assets. And I think, the plans try and find an appropriate balance in what is a natural conflict between those two interests. The interests of ecology and preservation versus development and use is something that has existed in park assets, not just at the municipal level, but also at the provincial and federal level for many, many years. So a lot of work has gone into trying to make sure that we get as broad a level of input as possible. So that summarizes the citizen engagement. I don't know if you have any other questions there, and then I could move on to the second part of your question if you remind me what it was.
No, I wanted an outline like that. You can move on to my other parts of my question.
Okay, and now you need to remind me what it was.
So I want to know, when they talk, there's discussion about cutting of trees, a lot of ecological damage and things that may occur as this plan is implemented or as it goes forward. That's the other part of my question. And then I'll finish off, Your Worship, if you don't mind me in this question. The plan going forward, I want you to comment on what is next, what's not decided upon, what needs more comprehensive comments and those type of things, so that this isn't what I'm trying to get across. This is not a locked-in plan, as some have made notice to. There's a lot of work. My colleague in front of me, Councillor Chase, has brought up a few good things, and I want to ensure that there is chance for council and others to comment as plans lay out. So can you talk about the ecological side of what we've been told on emails, and as well what the plan is going forward and how that functions and works as we move forward?
Right. Thank you for reminding me, Councillor. So the park plans were born, as I said, out of some tension in terms of what has been happening, particularly in Odell Park, to a lesser extent Killarney over the years, because Killarney is a newer park and was subject to a previous plan. So I'm going to focus my comments, I think, more on the Odell side for this conversation, because that's where the majority of the feedback has been received. There have obviously been concerns with some of the infrastructure that's been put into the park without express city approval, and how that has been allowed to evolve, and also, tension about what uses are appropriate in that park in the future. So if you rewind to 3 years ago, when I went before you and suggested it was time to do a series of park plans, and in particular plans for the regional parks, it was born out of a professional opinion that we needed to get a much more thorough understanding of the ecology of the parks, such that we could more appropriately manage human use of those parks into the future. So we hired appropriate planning experts with a significant foundation in ecology, who went in and provided for the city a much better understanding of the ecological baseline of the park and what some of the most important ecological considerations of the park are. Once we had that, we then created a structure through management zones where there are levels of activity directed to different areas of the park based on the ecological sensitivities of each area of the park. So there is a conservation zone where in the future, the city will make land use decisions with priority given to ecological considerations because of the sensitivities that have been identified. Then there's a second zone, which is kind of sitting in the middle and says, look, there's a balance of ecological considerations and human use considerations. So there's a broader range of uses that can be considered in that second zone. And then a much smaller third zone where the emphasis is based on more human activity, because those are areas where there is reduced ecological consideration. It's important for council to realize that it's not an all or nothing game, right? Our citizens still want to have the opportunity to experience that significant ecology. So it is not an attempt to keep people out of those areas where conservation is the priority. It is about engaging in dialogue with the community and making sure we do appropriate park management to provide reasonable opportunities to enjoy those spaces, but in a way that respects and gives priority to the natural environment. So the plan attempts to do that. And so then just to pivot to the last part of your question, this, in the case of Odell, is a very important first management plan for Odell. It provides a blueprint, but it is very much based on the principles of ongoing dialogue, and that there will be a close relationship between those with ecological expertise and those who have use-driven considerations that will be brought together to discuss issues of park management as we go through the full implementation period. So what the plan suggests, and what I think council, if you choose to adopt the plan, would then pursue as we pivot to implementation, is then a close dialogue and relationship with all of the people with an interest in those parks, and trying to find ways to balance ecological and human use considerations in that framework. So it is an invitation to dialogue going forward, to try and make sure that we protect those critical natural assets that are in the park, but at the same time acknowledge that urban parks are there for urban use and enjoyment, and we have to find the appropriate balance.
Yeah, and finally, Your Worship, Ken, I want to thank you and your group and your consultants and your employees. You did a fine job in this plan as far as I'm concerned. The balance of this plan looks great. You can't have all or nothing. It's never going to work. It's a balance. You've outlined to me that you're going to work cooperatively with groups going forward as we develop this plan and implement it. So I think it starts to address a number of issues that the public have that perhaps focused on only a few things. When we look at wanting to keep young families in our city growth, what's happening, keep interest in green space, respect ecology. I think this is a well-balanced plan, and I want to thank you for bringing it forward. And Your Worship, I intend to support this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grandy. Council, would you be willing to allow me to jump forward to the 25-year service awards and then come back to this? Just to allow, we have guests here, and sometimes guests have to make arrangements for somebody to look after people at home. And if we could just jump to that and come right back to this, if that be all right? Appreciate that. Thank you. I guess, yes.
I'll move to table the motion then.
Table the motion till that, okay?
we'll
Second
need a
by
second.
Councillor McGarity. All those in favor? Against? Motion's carried. Thank you. So we will go to 7.1 or 7.2, which is 25-year service awards. I'd like to thank the people that are here for sitting through this so far. This is all part of what we do, and it's always nice to have other people to hear the debate that we have. So we're going to begin with Deputy Chief Martin Gadet. Would you come to the podium, Deputy Chief? We have to do this remotely from now during this time. Martin Gadet joined the Fredericton Force on February 20th, 1995, after completing a phys ed degree at the University of Moncton, serving as a part-time police officer in the Shediac Police Force. Over the course of his 25 years with the Fredericton Police Force, Martin has worked in patrols, as a neighborhood officer, in training and media, Office of Professional Standards, and Staff Sergeant in charge of special teams. Martin was promoted to inspector on December 1st, 2013, when he took over the role of OIC of the Primary Response Team. On May 2nd, 2015, Martin was promoted to the position of Deputy Chief of Police. Martin has said that preparing for the unknown and dealing with it when it happens is one of the things he enjoys most about his career. Seeing members of the organization come together in times of crisis and being part of that team is the most rewarding. When not at work, Martin likes to spend time with his wife, Anne Nee Poirier, and their two daughters, Adele and Celeste. In his spare time, Martin enjoys the outdoor life, working in his yard, and motorcycling. Martin, normally we get to go up here and have a handshake and everything, but council is very appreciative of the years you've given us, the service that you do as deputy chief. It's a demanding job. The police are under the microscope and the scrutiny all the time, but I know that you're committed to being the service to the public, the transparency to the public. That's where the police get their authority. You're a role model in that, and we appreciate everything you do and of your family support. It's a dangerous job when your husband or your father goes out to work every day, and you can't do it without the love and support of your family. So Martin, thanks for the 25 years. And next we'd ask Susan, is it Sauve, Susan? Did I get that right? Susan Sauve, transit operator. Susan began her career with the City of Fredericton as an operator too for the Fredericton Transit in April of 1995. Prior to working with the city, Susan worked as a school bus operator in Ontario, looking after our little children. This experience made for an easy transition to the role of public transit operator. Susan was promoted to Operator 1 in August of 2000. During her career with the city, Susan has held leadership roles including CUPE, Local 1783 President, Recording Secretary, and Chief Shop Steward. She is currently the CUPE Local 1783 Vice President. She has also held the position of Relief Dispatcher. She is an excellent peer trainer for new hires and always greets customers with a smile. In 1997, Susan represented Fredericton Transit in response to a plane crash at the Fredericton Airport, where she brought a bus on site to warm and transport passengers. When she's not at work, Susan is an avid runner and kayaker, having completed multiple marathons with her husband, Kevin. She's also very devoted to her family, including her two granddaughters, who she dotingly refers to as her babies. Congratulations, Susan, on 25 years of service with the City of Fredericton. And our transit operators are ambassadors for our city. We have so many compliments that I receive, and I'm sure council receives, on the way that our transit interacts with our residents. And as I say, you're ambassadors. You do a great job, and we appreciate the 25 years of service to the public, immediately service to the public, coming in and smiling and having them sit down, getting to their destination. Thank you to you and your family, Susan. Peter Jones. Evening, Peter. Peter started working for the Parks and Trees Division in 1990 while attending UNB. He performed a variety of duties such as tree planting, hydro seeding, park construction, and various other maintenance activities. This has been an interesting discussion for you tonight then, hasn't it? After receiving a business administration degree with an economics major and concentrations in finance and accounting, Peter obtained a position with the purchasing division. He hit the ground running in a fast-paced, multidisciplinary environment, providing services in both internal customers and external customers. As a purchasing agent, some of the main duties he performs include development and preparation of tender documents, formal tender openings, contract negotiation, preparation of administrative reports, management of the purchasing function with regard to the operation of the ERP system, and ensuring compliance with legislation, regulations, policies, and procedures. Peter holds professional memberships in the Atlantic Purchasing Association and the National Institute of Governmental Purchasing, Inc., of which ongoing professional training is essential. Some of the more recognizable tenders projects that he has been involved with include Willie O'Ree Place, Grant Harvey Center, Bill Thorpe Walking Bridge deck replacement, municipal designation of the Destination All-Wheel Sports Plaza, and the Digital City Solution, to name a few of more than 2,500 projects. Several changes have transpired over the years of his service, notably new mayors and council. We do come and go. Corporate reorganizations, management and staffing changes, technology improvements, legislation and regulation changes, and adapting to a worldwide pandemic, all of which can increase the challenges and demands of public service. Peter's been able to rely on his skill set, his strong work ethic, and attention to detail to provide top quality professional service throughout. Many of the negotiation techniques that Peter utilizes result in substantial cost savings to the corporation, and I'll say to the taxpayers. Peter's dedication to the city is evident through his great attendance record. Aside from reporting 45 minutes early every day, Peter did not miss one day of work in over 12 years aside from his vacation period. Let me read that again. Coming into work 45 minutes early every day, and you didn't miss a day in 12 years. Goodness. In his spare time, Peter enjoys four-wheeling, moose hunting, and working in his garage. Obviously, there's no doubt of Peter's ongoing contributions make a significant difference to his division, department, the corporation, and to the city. And yes, and everyone remember, always follow the purchasing policy. Peter, that's a phenomenal record, Peter. And that just goes to show we've had a deputy police chief, we've had a transit officer, the people that are front facing to the public. And then we have somebody in your position who is back facing. And by that, I mean, the public doesn't see you very often, but your role is crucial to the success of our city. The way we buy things, the way we budget, the way we allocate money, and the way we deliver goods and services. So it's every job we have in this corporation is essential. And I want the public to know how important it is. Pete, thanks for your time and your dedication and your perfect attendance. It's wonderful. Thank you to you and your family. Trent Brewer. Trent started with the city in 1995 as a casual laborer. In February 96, Trent became a permanent employee as an engineering technician 1. He continued moving up to the levels 2 and 3. In February of 99, Trent was granted certification as a certified engineering technologist by the NB Society of Certified Engineering Technicians and Technologists. He showed excellent leadership qualities, and on June 2001, Trent was promoted to the position of foreman, water and sewer maintenance. He was able to lead the water and sewer division in relation to technical issues. He moved to supervisor water and sewer in September 2003. Trent represented the city as a team member at many ACWWA Top Ops competitions in Atlantic Canada, winning the Atlantic Canadian title several times and participating in the World Championships at the American Waterworks Association conferences in Canada and the United States. He's been a longtime supporter and volunteer with the Atlantic Canada Water and Wastewater Association, chairing the Operator Involvement Committee since 2010, and is also a longtime member of the Maritime Provinces Water and Wastewater Association. In 2006, Trent moved to the position of Assistant Manager of Water and Sewer, and then was promoted to become the Manager of Water and Sewer in 2009. In September 23, he was appointed as the Fleet and Utilities Manager and became responsible for both divisions, a position he continues to hold. Some of the projects Trent has worked on: the St. John Street Sanitary Sewer Renewal Project. He organized the Engineering and Ops First Safety Day in 2012. He served on numerous Lean Six Sigma project teams, including a project that completely restructured the water and sewer installation process in 2014. He served on the organizing committee of the Atlantic Canada Water and Wastewater Association annual conference in Fredericton in both 2002 and 2013. And he served on the organizing committee of the New Brunswick PEI chapter of the Canadian Public Works Association conference held here in Fredericton in 2015. A few of his certifications: he's a professional technologist, water distribution, wastewater collection and treatment system certified operator, Lean Six Sigma Green Belt recipient, and a City of Fredericton Unsung Hero Award for his efforts in the community, especially as a volunteer coach and mentor to numerous hockey and baseball teams. Trent is a corporate team player, a great manager, and a strong leader who is well respected by all his staff, peers, and the senior management of the City of Fredericton. I'll add council as well. He's very strong in labor relations in using a strong value system based on trust and respect. Trent is married to Lisa, and they have 2 boys, Kyle and Davin. He has been highly involved in the community as a hockey and baseball coach, and when he has the chance, enjoys spending time with his family at the camp along the Keswick River. He also enjoys travel to warm southern destinations each winter, not this winter. congratulations, Trent, on 25 years of service to the community. The service that the supervision and the leadership and the respect you have pays dividends. We are known as having one of the safest, purest, cleanest water systems. We are infrastructure systems. The renewal process that you're heavily involved in are second to none. And in that way, you contribute immensely to the operation of the city and the quality of life that people in the city have. And we all know your contributions outside the job in sports. There's been a lot of young athletes in this city have benefited from your coaching and your experience and your guidance. So that's just kind of the type of employees that we have here in the city, whether it's through professional association or through volunteer work or through anything else they do with individually with their family. They give all the time. So Trent, thank you very much for the 25 years. We appreciate it and we respect the work you do. Thank you. And I think your wife is a school teacher too, right? So good luck in the new school year coming up. We need good people like you to help our children get through that year. It's going to be quite a challenge for everybody. So we're going to skip back to the conversation on Odell Park or the park plans. And the next in line to speak was Councillor Erickson.
First, I'd like to move to remove this item off from the table.
That's correct. And that'd be seconded by Councillor McGarity. Put it back on the table. So all those in favor? Against? Motion's carried. Councillor Erickson.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to quickly thank the citizens of Fredericton for engaging in our park planning process. I want to thank staff and the consultants who put their time to this effort, and also to my council colleagues, including the Chair of Community Services, for their service on this file as well. It's been extensive. I'm going to keep my comments very short. I'm not going to review all the salient features of the plan, although if anyone wants to take me up on an opportunity to do that later, I'll be happy to talk about this at any length required. Nonetheless, not unlike Councillor Chase, I'd like to make a few suggestions about how council can move forward to add to the kind of planning environment that this operation has taken place in. And I'm intrigued by Councillor Chase's idea of a reference committee to kind of keep ourselves a little more on the pulse of the community when it comes to implementing things. We'll have to look at that in detail moving forward, I think. One of the other things that has struck me as I've engaged with people taking part in the process and also through communications that I've received in social media and email and other forums, not so much in person anymore, I think the city needs to undertake the development of a strategic urban forestry plan. This is something that happens in other communities in Canada. I think I've read 15 or 20 of them now myself. And it serves as a kind of an overriding framework in the strategic capacity for how the city approaches the management and administration of our urban forest. Having a document like that guiding us would allow us to, I think, communicate with our citizens a little better about how we keep in mind ecological concerns and interests, but not just in one little precious park. You know, it would refer to all the urban forest areas of the city and the riparian zones and all these environmentally sensitive areas. I'm a broken record on perhaps many subjects. One of them is that I continually say to people that the green values in our community continue to outpace our green policies and our green administrative practices. A strategic urban forestry plan would close the gap there. It would help us stay more relevant to the green values in our community. So I think moving forward, we should seriously consider adding that to our planning homework of the future. Including in that plan as well, and this would be one of the elements of park planning that we haven't done, and I'm not entirely sure how to do this, but we do need to figure out a way to do strategic or some kind of planning around the neighborhood parks, the smaller ones that may in some ways be even more precious, but to smaller pockets of our residents. And there's certainly lots of green parcels in our city also that I think our neighborhoods would benefit from having identified as private property versus public park property versus green spaces and so on and so forth. It kind of breaks my heart when I see developments happen in neighborhoods and everyone's surprised that a forest parcel that they love, well, it's actually private property and it's been zoned for development that just hasn't happened yet. I think we have an obligation to share that information with the community so that we're all on the same page when we look out of our windows and see green spaces that are for development versus green spaces that are parks versus ecological and so on. I do have one question that I would like to ask staff. One of the features of this high-level first order plan for Odell Park and Clarny Level Park is that moving forward as we implement them, many changes to recreational infrastructure are going to require a secondary plan so that it can be demonstrated that they meet the criteria and principles of the park management plan. Ken, if you could talk to us about what that looks like, and because I know there are many user groups and residents and other people in the community that need to have faith that that function of park planning and infrastructure implementation will also reflect their principles and values.
Through you, Your Worship, as I mentioned previously, these are high-level planning documents that will, help us make decisions about specific uses going forward. But the plan back in its February iteration, and made even more so as a result of those 230 comments we received in that February process and the draft you have before you, speaks about the need for ongoing dialogue as specific projects come forward pursuant to those park plans. So there is reference in the park plan under the management strategy section for the need for ongoing dialogue with stakeholders as individual items come forward. There is also, if you think back to the maps that show the trail systems there, talking about how various sections of trail will also be subject to in situ discussion with the community and stakeholders to try and arrive at the appropriate solutions for the park. So the plan is really the starting point and an invitation for ongoing dialogue as we move forward with specific implementation items. So we will have an ecological framework that will be useful. We have a sense of how we want uses to be organized in the park, but neither of those are replacements for ongoing discussion with the community with respect to specific elements of park infrastructure as we move forward. So I think, these plans are very similar to all of the other plans that council has been working on lately, where there is a renewed emphasis or a more intense emphasis on ongoing engagement as part of implementation. And that's something that I think the city has been committed to with each planning document that's come forward.
Good, thank you. And Councillor Rogers.
I'm not used to having to turn it on. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. There's lots of elements that I'd actually like to speak to. I will start with a question for Ken. Ken, could you please clarify, in the conservation zone, it speaks to, and I think that's about 53% of the park is considered conservation. And it speaks to these guided trails. And so, because on first reading of conservation, it would sort of appear as though it's very limited, the trail use. The guided trails, is that the single track? Is that referencing the single track? Because I think that a lot of the concerns that we're having that are being raised are people saying that suddenly we're sanctioning biking in conservation areas. And so could you please clarify, is it the single track when we're speaking of that? Are we now permitting that in the conservation area? Is this plan enabling that?
Your Worship, there will be limited situations where some new single track infrastructure may move through the conservation zones. The specific locations of that will be subject to kind of on the ground work to try and find the appropriate corridors that minimize ecological impact. The references to guided trails is really important though, because the idea is that in those conservation areas, we want to try and limit the footprint of that user experience to a much smaller portion of the surface, right? So the idea of a guided trail in those circumstances is that where ecological considerations warrant, there would be some physical design feature that would actually focus the human use into a much smaller footprint. It may involve elevated boardwalk. It may involve railings on the side to try and minimize that ecological impact. There will be situations where it is desirable to see some human activity in those conservation zones, because that's part of what people want to experience in a park. And, you know, being able to interpret and explore those features is an important objective. But it's just as you see, for example, in Fundy National Park, many times over, you see efforts made to try and make sure that human use is accommodated, but is done in a responsible manner that prioritizes ecology. And so it's carrying forward that methodology into the municipal experience.
Okay, thank you. And I think, because I think that that's where a lot of, where the issue, where the greatest issue and concern seems to be, is what is happening in that conservation area. And my sense, being I use that park extensively. I know it like the back of my hand, all those trails. I benefit from some of those single-use tracks that have been built. I think a lot of us do. A lot of the walkers are walking on the single tracks that have been built. My sense of what's happened, the greatest disturbance to that park is actually what has been human built. And by that, I don't actually mean the single tracks. I mean the huge service trail that goes up through the park. When you look at the erosion that exists there, when you look at the erosion that's been caused by culverts. So I'm nervous by anything that is actually human built. I think that causes the greatest detriment to the park. So that's actually where my concern lies. My experience with the hikers versus the bikers versus the recreational walkers is that most of them are naturalists. They want to be in nature. That's why the bikers weren't happy with the commuter trail that went in the outside, because they want to be intimate with nature in the same way that the walkers do. But I do appreciate that there's a tension, that if you're walking and suddenly a mountain bike comes upon you, that can be alarming. I also certainly recognize that it is not in any way okay for people who I have seen, bikers with backpacks and axes cutting trees to carve trails. In no way is that acceptable. But I think that I think most of the mountain bikers, and I think a lot of the mountain bikers that you interacted with in the public engagement are actually cyclers or bikers who would say that isn't okay either. Most of the bikers don't think that that's okay. Most of the bikers that I know say it's not okay to bike in Odell Park when it's wet because of the erosion that's being caused. They actually stay clear of Odell Park in the spring season. So a lot of the bikers are similarly respectful of nature, just as the walkers are. And I think that there is a way for them to coalesce, to be together and work on this plan, the fulfillment of this plan together. So I think that that's where I quickly get to, is really the detail of this plan is in all of the management strategies. The first things that I would like us to look at before we look at building trails or doing anything is to put in place clear responsibility at community services. Those of us who were there was a great deal of talk about the resourcing of this plan and how a lot of the resourcing isn't actually going towards the built infrastructure. It's going to the sort of the staff monitoring. I think that I remember the days of the caretaker in the park, and I know that as of late that's been a contentious issue, but there was a time when there was a caretaker there who walked through that park and knew it like the back of his hand. I recall being a high school kid and being caught at 10 o'clock at night and told to leave because that caretaker walked through that park so extensively. So I think that really, I would like our primary focus as we move forward to be focusing on who is caring for that park, who is the caretaker of that park, who is responsible for it, who is responsible for doing the monitoring, who potentially is responsible for gathering these user groups, because I think that actually that is where our focus needs to be. Instead of, although I appreciate the devil is in the detail in a plan, really the devil is in the implementation of a plan. And that is the part that is still within our control as we move forward. And I think that the detail there is the formulation of a user group, such as Councillor Chase mentioned. It's referenced in the plan. I think by passing this plan, we authorize that is for me, that would be the first step. Get that group together. I think they'll realize they have much more in common than they have that is different. So I would like us to see doing that. I would like, the plan calls for it being resourced appropriately, designated staff, a partnership strategy, naturalization and planting strategy, operations and maintenance plan. All of that is within the Odell Park plan. So if we act on those things quickly, I think that it will waylay many of the concerns that are being raised by the people who've reached out to us. So that is where I'd like us to see our focus. I'm committed to that 53% conservation area. I think it's for our physical health, but for our mental health and for the natural health, the health of our environment, that conservation zone is critical. I appreciate that people want to interact with it, but I think that we need to ensure that it is done very, very respectfully. And I think the best way to do that is through monitoring. So while I've grappled back and forth because my heart goes to just leave it the way that it is, my head is telling me that if we don't take really precious care of it, things are going to happen to it that are going to actually cause more detriment than some of the things laid out in this plan. So I can support moving forward in this only if I know that we are going to be doing that significant monitoring and caretaking, and that we're very cautious as we enter the conservation zone, and that all those decisions are guided and agreed upon by user groups. I want to finish by speaking to the public engagement, and we've done a lot of public engagement since I've been on council, which is now over 8 years. And sometimes we do it well, sometimes we don't do it so well. My feeling was that we'd really gotten this one right. But what I think I realize most is public engagement's an iterative process. It never really ends. It's a conversation that goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's like volleying a ball back and forth. And we responded, we hit it back. Residents have come back, they've hit it back to us, and we got to put it forth again. Like I don't think the conversation's over with Odell Park, and I don't want it to be, and I don't think that we'd be adhering to public engagement if we said the talking now stops. Public engagement's a value, it's a governance value, and if we value it, we have to keep going back and forth until we get it right. And so that's what I'm supporting this, that's what I'm supporting, a plan that believes in engaging, continuing to engage with user groups to get it right in that park. So I'm finished.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Worship. I'll speak just briefly on Odell Park because I think there's been great conversation here tonight, and I do want to commend staff and Councillor Millet for the overview of what the plan is there. I think when the original plan came forward, my concern always was that if we retain this as only an ecological park, that we're not including everybody in our community. And these are our regional parks. They're our gems of the city. Besides the trail system, I think probably parks would be right there as one of the number 2, number 3 for what people love about the city. But these parks have to include everybody. And that was my concern early on, is that we weren't really including the entire community. It was focusing on one group. So I'm glad to see that we're putting in the opportunity to have more active recreation in that park. And also, as we went through this process, I learned a lot about Odell that I didn't know about the old growth forest and, the age of the trees. And even Councillor Chase, I mean, think about it. They were probably just seedlings when he was in that park at 3 years old. So, and look where they are now. So so they've done a great job on that. So I will be supporting the park plan for that. And I also wanted to mention this other little parcel that we've got across the river called Killarney Park, because there hasn't been much discussion on that one, oddly enough, because it's it's over 2 times the size of Central Park, and it's probably one of the largest municipal parks in the country. And the opportunities that are going to be presented for us in Killarney Park are just enormous. I don't think that we should ever think that we will have exclusive uses in one park and not have any uses in another. I don't think that's the right way to go, because people want to be able to access them a lot of them through active transportation to get to them. So I think our approach is perfect. I'm especially pleased. I did note as well the recreation area of the management zone 3 in Killarney is about the same size as Odell. So that gives you a little idea of how large Killarney Park is. But the opportunities there are just endless, and especially when you look at the the Esker and Ridge Forest area. I'm really pleased to see that we'll have some focus on that to perhaps, put better trail systems in there, some interpretive areas. There's a glacier area there that, the education opportunities there are just immense. So I look forward to being able to explore more of Killarney Park and having the accesses to be able to do that, because I think we can get the community in there a lot and increase the active uses, the mountain biking. I think, as I said to one of my residents that contacted me, I think as we continue to build out the mountain biking courses and so on, that some of this will start to transition on its own, because it's like any great facility you build somewhere. They might say, if I want to go do that, I'm going to go over to Killarney anyway, and that might help to address some of those conflicts. So I think that this document, I always, having been on council, I think we should have a sense that we've done a pretty good job, because nobody was really completely pleased with what we did. So when that happens, I think that you've weighed the pros and cons of everything. And I think at the end of the day, we've come up with a document that certainly will preserve the ecological components of Odell Park. It will continue to make it a gem in our city for the next generations to come, and give us a plan going forward to trying to develop Killarney Park into further use. So very pleased with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well said, Councillor Keenan. I do think we struck balance with these two parks. Thanks to Chairman Malay, did a great job representing council throughout this process, and of course the staff who've been dealing with this for a number of years. And I guess that kind of brings me to a question that I'll have for Ken. Is how many more of these plans do we have moving forward? And just let me finish before you answer that. The last number of years, this took 2 or 3 years. We had Wilmot, we had Carleton, we have a number of neighborhood parks. You get excited about these parks and then you don't hear anything for the longest time. I think somewhere along the line, and this is up to council to find a better process, a quicker process to engage the public. 2 or 3 years isn't acceptable. We're a small city. We should be able to engage much quicker. We have limited resources. We can't expect to tie up all the staff's time. But now I'd like to see start executing on some of these parks. I remember when I was presented with Wilmot and Carleton probably 4 or 5 years ago now. I was so excited when I saw them, and then it kind of fades. You don't even really remember what the parks look like. So can you give me an update on that, Ken?
I can, Your Worship. There's probably no one happier than I am that this is the last of the 6 park plans we committed to do as part of a series of park plans. So for the public's benefit, we did neighborhood park plans for the High Point Ridge area and also for Leanne Valcourt. Council, I think, recalls that there was money placed in the budget to actually get work going in those parks this year. And my understanding is that work will be underway imminently. I think some of the tender documents are actually, if not out the door, very soon to be going out the door. So, council has funded and is moving forward with implementation in those 2 park plans. We then also did Carleton Park and Wilmot Park at the community level. It might be a little subtle to people, but we have got to work on implementing those park plans. That perimeter trail around Wilmot Park is going into place. There's been very significant process there. There's work happening with the renewal of the bandshell and putting that in the proper place consistent with the plan. So concrete work done there. A lot of work done at Carleton Park as well. The Living Wall. There's been work done with respect to the Boss Gibson statue at the train bridge, and further work being done thinking about how we might start to reclaim some of that land down on the river's edge that's currently used for parking in a more appropriate parking area. So there is work happening there, and then the work, we will start to also bring implementation items with these 2 parks online as well. So So 6 plans. These are the last 2. And, you know, I think council should be proud of the fact that there is tangible progress that has been made on each of those plans already, which is a good sign. And so I think as Councillor Rogers indicated, the dialogue with the community doesn't stop as a result of this. It's an invitation to more dialogue and implementation and conversation. And, you know, I think having the plan is important. I wanted to hit, because I feel like Killarney Park didn't get a lot of time tonight, just to Councillor Keenan's point. You know, there was a council back in 1985 that thought Killarney Lake would be a good place for a park in the future. So there was a plan done back in 1985, and councils worked on that for many years to acquire land, to have the land available to implement that vision. And now significant work has been made to make that park real. So in the case of Carleton, this is version 2 of the plan. The first piece was getting all the land assembled and starting with the basic implementation. Now we're moving into another phase. So, you know, we do have a good track record over time. It takes time, but we do have a good track record of moving these projects forward over time.
Okay. Anybody else?
Nice. Sorry, Your Worship, just one little thing, and it's not a point, it's about Killarney. I hope we map it well, because I get lost. Oh, what's that? It's the chair's discretion. He informed Councillor McDermott.
You were just making a statement, right?
Yeah, I was just saying, I hope it gets mapped. It's the only, I get lost, it's so big. I get lost over there,
Okay.
which isn't a good thing.
We will map it well for you.
Thank
yes.
you.
Yeah. All right. So it's been moved and seconded, and we've had a robust debate. And so all those in favor of the motion? All those against? It is passed unanimously. And there's very little I can add to this, and I won't even attempt really, other than to say that, again, to reiterate my thanks to our great staff for the leadership, Julie and the team and Ken, and to the public. The public has been completely engaged in this, and it never ceases to amaze me how much ownership the people of this city take of every part of this city, and that's good. We cannot move forward on any project in this city without expectation of significant feedback. When I say feedback, I mean that in a positive way. It's they challenge us, and our staff rise to the occasion, and we get a better plan for that. So this is a plan that we can be proud of, and has been said tonight by Councillor Rogers and others, and reiterated by Ken. There'll be continual dialogue on this, so it's important. So yes, Councillor Mallet.
Just a question for you from clerk. Do we have to read the resolution? It wasn't read.
Yeah, we didn't. Is this one we should read, City Clerk?
We don't have. I mean, we know what we know what the purpose of the resolution was, because it's an e-scribe and it was promoted. But you know, if you want to do it for transparency, yeah.
Okay, good. Well, thanks everybody for that and for hanging in there. That was a tough one. So, public presentations. Wait, now I get to on behalf.
Sorry, Your Worship.
What are we doing?
We didn't do approval of minutes.
Oh, approval of minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Down at the bottom of the page. Minutes of the regular City Council meeting of April 27th. That be moved by Councillor Dara and second by Councillor Keenan. All those in favor of the motion? All those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. So for the public's benefit, this council has a recognition award for our own councillors, and they're done in 4-year increments. And every 4 years, a particular councillor has to be on council. Actually, it begins with 8 years, I think. I take that back. I think you have to have 8 years in to begin. And tonight, we have the honor of presenting 2 8-year pins, 3 12-year pins, and 2 16-year pins. There is a lot of experience, knowledge, and passion around this council table. So tonight, Councillor Kate Rogers and Councillor Greg Erickson will be receiving their 8-year pin, and they're on the table there for you to pick up a bit later tonight. Councillor McDermott?
Your Worship, I'd just like to make a point that I think in the future there should be a 7.5-year pin.
I'll give you my 8-year pin. And we have the Deputy Mayor, Stephen Hicks, and Councillor Eric McGarity and Councillor Stephen Chase receiving their 12-year pin, and they're on the table there for each of you. And we have Councillor Bruce Grandy and Councillor Dan Keenan receiving their 16-year pin, and they're on the table there. So thank you. Congratulations, one and all. And that's been it's a phenomenal service record, and there's been a lot of decisions and time together. We spend sometimes more time here than we do with our family, and it is a family here. So I really I really appreciate the time and the effort you put into the job. And this is only a pin, but it's a way we can say thank you for all the time and the effort you put forward. Councillor Dara.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for all the other councillors who paved the way for us youngins to get through this. I just want one question though.
Yes.
The 16-year pins, are they covered in dust?
Okay. So we'll move on to the third reading of bylaws. 8.1 bylaws Z 9.1 and Z 5 193 for 707 7737 Beaverbrook Street. Yes, we have Councillor Keenan and Dara must retire from the chambers. And again, for the public, if somebody is not present for the first and second reading, they're not allowed to participate in the third reading. So that's why those two councillors cannot participate. So we'll ask Councillor Grandy to take this as it's the municipal plan amendment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Be resolved that the terms and conditions be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Rogers. On the question, all those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion is carried. Carry on, Councillor Grandy.
Thank you. Be resolved that bylaw number Z-9.1, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z-9, a College Hill secondary municipal plan for the city of Fredericton, be read by summary pursuant to section 15, subsection 4 of the Local Governance Act.
Seconded by Councillor Rogers. On the question, all those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion is carried.
Whereas municipalities may make bylaws pursuant to the Local Governance Act, now therefore be enacted by the Council of the City of Fredericton pursuant to the authority vested in it by Section 10 of the Local Governance Act, SMB 2017, Chapter 18, summarized as follows. The purpose of the proposed bylaw number Z-9.1 is to amend bylaw number Z-9 in order to exclude the properties located at 707, 713, 719, 723, 737 Beaverbrook Street from the policy area C of the College Hill planning area. And be it resolved that bylaw number, do I keep going, City Clerk?
No. It end at the end of item 3.
Well, it's got and. At the
Oh,
end.
yeah, and be it resolved.
Right, and be resolved
Yeah.
that the bylaw number Z-5.139, 5.193, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z-5, a zoning bylaw for the city of Fredericton, be read by summary pursuant to section 15, subsection 4 of the Local Governance Act.
Did we skip a section, City Clerk?
I'm so confused.
My notes here is we didn't finish the third item. Did we only voted
Yes,
on?
I read it down to and,
Okay.
and then that's what I asked the question from the clerk. Do I keep going or do I not? I didn't get an answer. And the
I
deputy
think
mayor
you
took
skipped,
the-
when you got to and, you skipped right to item 4 and you read item 4.
Yeah,
There's a second part to item 3. Be resolved that bylaw Z91. It's not on
okay.
yours?
No, it didn't show up on mine. Okay, be resolved that bylaw number Z-9.1, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z-9, a College Hill secondary municipal plan for the city of Fredericton be given to reading by title.
Here we go. Second by Councillor Rogers. On the question, Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to speak out at this point just on some of the communication that we've received from residents that live in the area and concerns that they have about this. I think that there are two, it can be characterized mainly by two significant concerns that I think are worthy of being mentioned and maybe addressed by staff. One is the traffic concern that increasing density in that area on not a very large parcel of land, what concerns that's going to cause in an already extremely busy area. There's been significant development on McLeod Hill. I think 600 units, I think is around what what's been built there in the past couple of decades, and we've had to put in a lot of traffic calming measures to address the increase in density in that area. It's still very busy. There's a lot that goes on. I would say even now with the lights and the crosswalks and the speed bumps, and it still hasn't fully addressed the traffic concern. And now on top of that, we're adding a 48-unit apartment building. And so I know that there's significant traffic concern, and I'm wondering if staff can speak to how that is being addressed, about as far as a traffic study, traffic calming. I will add to traffic, because to me they're one and the same, is parking. I believe there isn't the typical parking because of its location, the sense that we won't need as much parking, but we have seen in other developments in the city where we have made decisions based on that. One very recently on Squire Street that we've then after the fact had to address parking. So I'm wondering if staff maybe could speak to traffic and increased traffic and parking concerns in the development.
Councillor Rogers, will ask Sean Lee, are you on the line? And if so, could you please speak to that?
Your Worship, yes, I am. So through your Worship to Councillor Rogers. So the section of Beaverbrook Street is an important east-west arterial for the city of Fredericton. Right now, it's carrying about 13,000 vehicles per day on it. The proposed development is in an area where it has direct access to transit. It is on the trail that's in behind, so it's great for walking and biking. And it also has a strong sidewalk system. A lot of the users that are here will probably be attached to the university. So from an overall traffic perspective, Beaverbrook Street is busy. It will get busier, and all the developments we're seeing kind of throughout the city will be adding traffic to our major corridors, and that is where we essentially want the traffic to go. So in this particular instance, a traffic study was not suggested or not required because the loading on the street is understood quite well. As we go forward, there are plans to provide some widening at this location to improve flow of traffic as it enters to Windsor Street at McLeod Avenue. And that will be coming forward in the next number of years as development continues to occur. With respect to parking, I may have to turn that part over to planning. So I think as part of the overall development of properties, especially when there's a lot of amenities like this, the parking requirements are decreased somewhat.
Ken Forrest?
Your Worship, I'm actually, Mr. Batalana is on the line, and
Oh.
he's much more knowledgeable on the file, so I'll defer to him.
Marcello Batalana, please.
Is he on mute, Your Worship?
Marcello, I think your system's on mute.
How's that? Can everyone hear me?
That's a lot better.
Okay, so sorry, I'll start again. So with with respect to this application, the requirement is 25 spaces for parking, and what's being provided is 29 spaces. What we did in terms of our review is this is an excellent opportunity for active transportation alternatives. So given the amount of amenities around this particular property, we felt that that the amount of parking is actually quite appropriate in this case. Thank you, Your Worship.
So would a better way to clarify, or I guess qualify it, would be to say that while there's enough parking required for this zone, there isn't the typical amount of parking that you would see for a 48-unit complex?
Through you, Your Worship, that's accurate.
Yeah.
In this case, the lens that we look at for parking is we would consider it under the town plat provisions, and this is right on the cusp. So if this development was occurring, let's say off of Leanne Street, the quotient of parking would be much higher. But because it's in it's part of the urban fabric, it's a little closer to the downtown, then the lens for parking is within the town plat.
I hope that it plays out the way that we would want it to, because we have seen as of late instances where that hasn't played out as we imagined it would. And I think there's skepticism amongst the residents that it is going to play out that way. Many of them who live in the area and know they can walk every place still have a car, right? So I think that there is concern there, concern that we're not quite far along in our active transportation, that people have chosen to not drive. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think it is a valid concern. I think that the increased traffic is a valid concern. Another very valid concern in my mind is putting a building of that size right on the trail. And again, it's sort of a natural environmental concern. I think that it's going to impact the enjoyability of the natural environment of the trail to have such a large building constructed right next to it, where there already are a lot of other buildings right in the vicinity. I walk that trail very regularly, and I can say it's a pretty urban part of the trail. It's essentially a sidewalk on the other, I shouldn't say it's a sidewalk. It very much is a trail, but at the same point, there's not a lot of, there aren't a lot of trees, there's not a lot of nature, and there will be even less with the erection of this large building. So I think that the traffic concerns and the impact on the trail are very valid concerns, and I don't like taking them lightly. I know that we're weighing that against increased density in the urban core, and I know that that's what the municipal plan calls for. So I certainly understand our dilemma, but I felt I need to sort of, out of due respect for the residents that live in the area, say that they are significant concerns, and I think they're very valid concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. Councillor Gandy, carry on.
Yep. Whereas
Oh,
municipalities.
second, I didn't call the vote on that, did I? No. So we had to move for a second. All those in favor of the motion? Oh, sorry. I thought you were voting on it. Sorry, Councillor McDermott. Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, okay. We'll get on the next motion. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion's carried. Councillor Gandy.
Thank you. Whereas municipalities may make bylaws pursuant to the Local Governance Act. Now therefore be enacted by the Council of the City of Fredericton pursuant to the authority vested in it by Section 10 of the Local Governance Act, SMB 2017, Chapter 18, summarized as follows. The purpose of the proposed bylaw number Z-5.193 is to amend bylaw number Z-5 by rezoning the property located at 707, 713, 719, 723, and 737 Beaverbrook Street from multi-residential zone 2 MR2 to multi-residential zone 5 MR5 in order to permit the construction of a 48-unit apartment building. And be it resolved that the bylaw number Z-5.193, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z-5, a zoning bylaw for the City of Fredericton, be given third reading by title.
Be seconded by Councillor Rogers. Clerk, I think we skipped one again, did we?
Yeah, we skipped, we have to go back to 4. See, what happened was he read 3 and then 4, went back and read 3, and the second part of 3, he has to read 4 and then go 5. Sorry, Councillor Brandy, my apologies to e-scribe. I blame it on something else.
No problem. Be resolved that the bylaw number Z-5.193, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z-5, a zoning bylaw for the City of Fredericton be read by summary pursuant to Section 15, subsection 4 of the Local Governance Act.
Here we go. We're getting in order now. Okay. Seconded by Councillor Rogers. On the question, Councillor McDermott.
Button pressed. Look, just in response, I guess, in general response to Councillor Rogers' concerns, I agree. I think that there are that the community has raised issues about traffic and parking. And one of the points that she pointed out was about Squire Street. And the proponent of the development was at Planning Advisory Committee, and I did raise this specific issue at the time. And because that is one of my concerns. It is one of my concerns. And I wanted to ask the proponent about it, about their feeling of confidence that they were going to be able to manage those 48 spaces appropriately in terms of who they put in, but also to manage the use of the other people who may have a car who actually there's no room for a space to actually, you know, to look at it and say, we need people who actually don't have cars. And I think that, I think it's tempered by the fact that this development is, unlike Squire Street, actually in an ideal location for a reduction in parking capacity, precisely for the reasons that both Marcello as well as Sean Lee mentioned in their responses. Is you've got a walking trail behind, you've got sidewalk in front, there's a transit system that goes by. Squire Street only has a sidewalk from an active transportation point of view. And I think that was one of, ultimately, that was what ran afoul to it. It was close to necessarily close to a bus, that sort of stuff. So I feel actually a little bit more comfortable in regards to that. I think the other thing just from my own perspective on this is increasingly we're having conversations about large developments. Those large developments are happening in places that we didn't necessarily see them happening previously. A lot of this is being driven by the growth strategy of the municipal plan. There's a recognition that we are becoming increasingly urbanized as a community. That urban context requires a different way of thinking and a different way of planning. It's not going to be perfect right away, but I think that we are making great strides in closing our transportation, our active transportation network gaps, to building out and improving our active transportation capacity, like with the work that's being done on Brookside Avenue from a complete street point of view, where all those elements are being considered. The increase in traffic in that immediate area, I think can appear to be actually really quite, you know, what would it be? 120 car trips a day. When you factor that into 13,000 cars that are actually using it right now, and the capacity of that road is an arterial road. But more importantly is to look at any development really that's happening to the east of there is going to have an impact on that. So if we're going to be looking at traffic issues in those areas, and I think it's important that we keep an eye on it from a safety point of view, but I think if we're going to be looking at traffic issues specific to that area, there are other developments that are happening. They're going to have an impact on it, but because they're happening so far away, it doesn't enter that conversation. Our road system it's a network that funnels people appropriately into larger arterial roads to move them more efficiency. And anyway, look, I think that this is just one more of an example of, I think, understandable concern of residents, but it's part of this transition of working towards a more urbanized landscape of development, and that ultimately in the end, look, I'm not going to pretend my faith in the system is going to get there. I think there are mechanisms that could be put in place and that will be addressed to address some of those concerns. Yeah. So,
thank you for that. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion is carried. And I guess we'll ask you to repeat the fifth.
Sorry, I think Councillor Rogers, did you vote against it?
Oh, did you? Sorry,
Can you read it
Councillor
into the
Rogers against, yes. Councillor Grandy. Do we have to read the fifth bullet again? I guess we do.
I just want to hear your voice.
Yep.
Here we go. Whereas municipalities may make bylaws pursuant to the Local Governance Act, now therefore be enacted by the Council of the City of Fredericton and pursuant to the authority vested in it by Section 10 of the Local Governance Act, SMB 2017, Chapter 18, summarized as follows. The purpose of the proposed bylaw number Z-5193 is to amend bylaw number Z-5 by rezoning the property located at 707, 713, 719, 723, and 737 Beaverbrook Street from multi-residential zone 2 MR2 to multi-residential zone 5 MR5 in order to permit the construction of a 48-unit apartment building, and be it resolved that bylaw number Z-5.193, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z-5, a zoning bylaw for the City of Fredericton, be given third reading by title, but before you do anything, there's an extra word in there, at. Does that matter?
No.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Rogers. On the question. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Councillor Rogers, nay. Motion carried. Thank you for that, Councillor Grandy. Item 6 or 8.2, bylaw Z5 194 45 Candace Street, rezoning or zoning amendment. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Be resolved that terms and conditions be adopted.
Be seconded by Councillor McGarity. On the question. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion's carried.
Be it resolved that bylaw number Z-5.194, bylaw to amend bylaw number Z5, a zoning bylaw for the city of Fredericton, be read summary pursuant to section 15 sub 4 of the Local Governance Act.
Seconded by Councillor McGarity. On the question. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion is carried. Carry on.
Whereas municipalities make bylaws pursuant to the Local Governance Act, now therefore being enacted by the Council of the City of Fredericton pursuant to the authority vested in it by Section 10 of the Local Governance Acts, SNB 2017, Chapter 18, summarized as follows. The purpose of the proposed bylaw number Z-5.194 is to amend bylaw number Z5 under the residential zone to R2 in order to permit a contractor shop on property located at 485 Canada Street. Be it resolved that bylaw number Z-5.194, bylaw to amend bylaw number Z5 is only by for the city of Fredericton be given third reading by title.
Seconded by Councillor McGarity. On the question. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion is carried. We'll move on to the next item, and I have to remove myself from this one. So Deputy Mayor, is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll just give you time to exit.
Where's it gonna go? Can no one come back? Why did all leave?
Okay to proceed, City Clerk? Okay. Yeah, we're good. Councilor McDermott.
What?
Yeah, I want you to read it. If it's not a bother.
Oh, well, now that you mention it. Yeah, I need another half year to bring myself up to speed. Thank you. Be it resolved the terms and conditions be adopted.
Seconded by Councilor McGarity. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Councilor McDermott.
Be resolved the bylaw number Z5.195, the bylaw to amend bylaw number Z5 zoning bylaw for the city of Frederick be read by summary pursuant to section 15 subsection 4 of the Local Governance Act.
Seconded by Councilor McGarity. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Councilor.
Whereas municipalities may make bylaws pursuant to the Local Governance Act, now therefore be it enacted by the Council of the City of Fredericton pursuant to the authority vested in it by Section 10 of the Local Governance Act, SNB 2017, Chapter 18, summarized as follows. The purpose of proposed bylaw number Z5.195 is to amend bylaw number Z5 under the city center zone in order to increase the allowable building height to 31.2 meters in order to permit the construction of a 10-story mixed-use building on property located at 199 Queen Street. And be it resolved that bylaw number Z5.182, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z5, zoning bylaw for the city of Fredericton, be given third reading by title.
Thank you, Councilor McDermott. Seconded by Councilor McGarity. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, we'll wait for his worship and Councilors Dara and Keenan to return.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Does everybody want to take just a 5-minute break? I know a couple have taken a break, but it's been a long night. I think we can afford just 5 minutes just to stretch your leg, get a quick drink of water or something. Yeah. Yeah, the air conditioning guy at 9:30.
He's saying how much he loves public art. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I was trying to bring levity to my current thing, in a way, because I totally ignored it. That was more, and I do get lost there. It's not a trail forks, and we use this half trail fork, something hike, and it's not the main trails, but when you get out further, so I do Madison has, yeah, you think it's some of the trails that I have. So they, and we go right? It is I feel badly it didn't get talked more about. Yeah, that's right. It wasn't. Yeah, yeah, no, but yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
but yeah, a lot
like
of
just a gazebo, right?
Yeah.
They just care about, just care about one.
It is close to the trail. Jeez. Mine charges super slowly. Like it's got to be an all night. Oh, okay. Mine doesn't die as fast, but it charges slowly. Yeah, let's keep going. John. We're waiting on McDermott. John. He will sit down.
Let's call the meeting back to order. Thank you, everybody. We'll move to public presentation of bylaws, 9.1, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the regular City Council meeting held on June 22nd, 2020, City Council adopted it's adopted a resolution authorizing the preparation of a bylaw to amend the municipal plan for the City of Fredericton in order to make housekeeping amendments, and this meeting was set as the date for the public presentation. The purpose of the proposed bylaw number Z-6.1 is to amend the municipal plan to perform housekeeping amendments to bylaw number Z-6, a municipal plan for the City of Fredericton. I wish to advise the public that proposed bylaw number Z-6.1 is available for public perusal at the office of the City Clerk and City Hall and on the City of Fredericton's website. Written objections may be submitted within the next 30 days.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 9.2, bylaw number 10.1.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the regular City Council meeting held on June 22nd, 2020, City Council adopted a resolution authorizing the preparation of a bylaw to amend the City Centre secondary municipal plan for the City of Fredericton in order to make housekeeping amendments, and this meeting was set as a date for the public presentation. The purpose of the proposed bylaw number Z-10.1 is to amend the City Centre municipal plan to perform housekeeping amendments to bylaw number Z-10, the City Centre secondary municipal plan for the City of Fredericton. I wish to advise the public that proposed bylaw number Z-10.1 is available for public perusal at the office of the City Clerk and City Hall and on the City of Fredericton's website. Written objections may be submitted within the next 30 days.
Thank you, City Clerk. We'll move on to item 10.1, which is the Campbell Creek Dam presentation. And who's taking the lead on that one?
Your Worship, Sean
Lee,
Lee
you're going to
here.
start us off? Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess so tonight we have a number of presenters from a number of different groups that have been working on the Campbell Creek Dam proposal. So I think Jillian Hutchins is going to lead this off, and she'll take you through this this presentation, and then we'll answer questions after. Thank you.
Thank you. Jillian, take it away.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. So my name is Jillian Hudgens, and I'm the project coordinator at the Nashwauk Watershed Association, and I'm here this evening along with project partners to speak about the Campbell Creek Stream Restoration Project. So next slide, please. So to begin, we'll be introducing the project and the timeline. Caleb Zellman from the Maliseet Nation Conservation Council will speak about the history of the area. Following that, Natalie DeSeta from the Nashwauk Watershed Association and Nathan Wilbur from the Atlantic Salmon Federation will speak about the environmental benefits of the stream restoration project, specifically for aquatic species at risk. And finally, Jody Boone from the city will speak about the safety and engineering aspects of the project. So the restoration project is a partnership between environmental NGOs, Wolastoqey or Maliseet communities and organizations, and the City of Fredericton. That was formalized in 2019 and will last until at least 2022. The major component of the ecosystem restoration is the removal of the derelict 100-year-old Campbell Creek or Millbrook Dam, which is preventing access to important spawning, feeding, and cold water habitat for species at risk. In 2019, Maliseet Nation Conservation Council and Nashwauk Watershed Association secured grants from Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada to push the project ahead, and further funding was also provided by Atlantic Salmon Conservation Foundation and in-kind contributions from project partners. So funding received so far from grants has totaled $632,000, and in-kind contributions are estimated to be on the order of $114,000. Partners on the project not previously mentioned include St. Mary's First Nation and the Wolastoqey Nation in New Brunswick. And I just want to make a note that we will have a public webinar on July 23rd at 7 p.m. where project partners will be available to answer questions from the public. Next slide, please. So the dam on Campbell Creek is located 350 meters upstream from its confluence with the Nashwauk River in Marysville, shown by the red arrow on the map. And currently the dam is the property of the city of Fredericton. It was built in 1919 to service the Marysville cotton mill and previously provided drinking water for some houses in Marysville. The dam has never provided fish passage and currently serves no purpose. The removal of the dam has been proposed as an environmental compensation project on 2 occasions, but the proposals were unsuccessful. In 2014, GemTech prepared a report that explored other options for the future of the dam. However, all other options were either very expensive or did not address the safety and environmental issues posed by the dam. Therefore, project partners have decided that the dam be removed as it is a liability to the city in terms of safety, and it has negatively affected fish habitat and aquatic connectivity for almost a century. Removing the dam and restoring the ecosystem will not only benefit aquatic species, but also reunite the Wolastoqiyik with an important region in their traditional territory and local residents to an iconic and productive tributary. Next slide, please. The Campbell Creek Dam is 8 meters high, 75 meters long, and 4.5 meters thick. It's a concrete gravity dam. Its spillways are inadequately sized, and the dam does not meet the Canadian Dam Association guidelines in terms of hydraulic capacity of the spillways, stability, seepage and erosion, or public safety. It drains 32.5 square kilometers of mostly forested watershed, and its head pond extends 2.5 hectares. Next slide. And it's important to note that the head pond of the dam has completely drained at least twice in the last 25 years. Originally, the dam had a sluice gate at its base to allow control over the water level. The gate was opened in 1995 and became stuck open. And at some point in the late 1990s, someone fabricated a plug to block the flow. However, with the sluice gate broken, there was no longer control over the water level in the head pond. The head pond remained full until August 2016 when the plug let go and the head pond drained again. And Campbell Creek was free flowing until November 2017 when the dam was again blocked without the city's permission. While the stream was free flowing for just over a year, tree stumps were visible on the stream bank. The banks revegetated naturally, as you can see in the photo, and the stream incises sediment down to the former gravel of the stream bed. Next slide. So the why that is driving the restoration of Campbell Creek is that dams alter aquatic ecosystems by modifying geomorphic, hydrologic, and ecological connectivity. So this means that the barrier changes the way that a river functions in terms of its physical, chemical, and biological state. The system upstream from the Campbell Creek Dam has been out of balance for the last 100 years due to the absence of migrating fish and other aquatic species that provide important nutrients to the ecosystem. Next slide, please. So as mentioned in the introduction, this is a multi-year undertaking. Project planning and the collection of baseline data information began in 2017, and a major portion of the funding for the project was secured in 2019 by Maliseet Nation Conservation Council. The first step towards restoration of the creek is to draw down or drain the head pond, which will be done this summer. Draining the head pond the year before the dam is removed will allow natural revegetation. It will minimize sedimentation of the stream during construction by drying out the stream banks, and vegetation will stabilize the existing soils. This summer and fall, we'll continue to collect environmental data. The engineering design will be completed and we'll be going through the permitting process. The dam will be removed in the summer of 2021. After its removal, we'll begin revegetating the former head pond with native vegetation. We'll continue to collect environmental data after the dam is removed to evaluate changes in the ecosystem. A heritage display will be installed in 2022 to recognize the history of the Campbell Creek Dam, as well as the Wolastoqiyik use of the area. So at this point, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Caleb Zellman from Maliseet Nation Conservation Council.
Thanks, Jillian, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So I'm going to speak a little bit to the history of the region as well as the dam itself. Next slide, please. So let's The Wolastoqiyik, or the Maliseet people, have relied on the Nashwaak watershed since time immemorial as a vital source of food, as well as a corridor of travel. As far back and even potentially further than 12,700 years ago, Wolastoqiyik people camped and used resources along the shores of a large glacial lake that actually encompassed the lower Nashwaak and where we now know as Marysville. So Wolastoqiyik oral history describes how Glooskap, or the creator, actually drained this massive lake long ago by smashing a large dam that giant beavers had erected at Reversing Falls. The next slide, please. So before extensive logging took place, the Nashwaak watershed actually contained old growth white pine forests and was well-known caribou and moose hunting grounds for the Wolastoqiyik. So the Nashwaak was also well known for its fertile fishing grounds, especially for species like balum, or Atlantic salmon, or magok, striped bass, as well as brook trout. And the colonists that arrived on the Nashwaak also relied on the waterway, but they soon began adversely impacting both the river as well as the Wolastoqiyik. Next slide, please. So in 1766, British settlers actually dammed the lower Nashwaak to power a sawmill, not caring how this barrier would impact local fish populations. But the Wolastoqiyik actually knew, they knew exactly how it would impact fish populations, and they threatened to destroy this very first dam that the colonists had erected on the Nashwaak, not only because of the impacts on the fish populations, but also the impacts to their the rights to fish and fish species that they relied upon for their survival. So this was the impetus for over 250 years of Wolastoqiyik resistance to the damming of rivers in their ancestral territory. Next slide, please. So this brings us to more recent history, where the Campbell Creek, or the Millbrook Dam, was actually built in 1919 to supply water to the Marysville cotton mill. When the mill closed in the 1970s, the dam actually remained. So the dam, as well as the brook downstream, are certainly iconic to the town of Marysville and have provided recreational opportunities to local residents. In summer months, this might include boating or swimming or fishing in and around the reservoir. And in the winter months, skating and pond hockey are known to occur in the frozen reservoir. So we acknowledge the importance of the dam and this waterway. And once the dam has actually been removed, we'll install a heritage display in the town of Marysville to provide further information on this portion of the watershed, as well as its evolution over time, with artwork and carving done by Wolastoqiyik artists from Billick, or from Kingsclear First Nation. So next up, I'm going to pass this off to Natalie DeSetta from the Nashwaak Watershed Association.
Thank you, Caleb. So my name is Natalie DeSetta, and Nathan and Wilbur and I will be talking to you about the ecological considerations of restoring the Campbell Creek Dam. Next slide, please. So when we consider ecosystem restoration, we are taking into account the holistic interplay among all aspects of the environment, including living and non-living components. A healthy ecosystem is in a state of dynamic equilibrium that can take hundreds of millions of years to develop. So when we dam rivers, we abruptly disrupt this long-lived balance by cutting off upstream rivers from their downstream counterparts, changing the way that a river flows, limiting the movement of organisms and transfer of high-value nutrients in the system. Whereas dams are relatively short-lived, having lifespans of 50 to 100 years, they are not designed to be permanent features of the landscape. Once they have served their purpose, it is our duty to remove them and to restore biological and structural function of the ecosystem, not least of all because of the ecosystem services that will be gained in doing so, which Nathan and I will detail throughout this presentation. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go over the specific impacts of the Campbell Creek Dam on the local ecosystem. And here we have a recent satellite image of the dam and its surroundings. So before the creek was dammed, water was freely flowing along this blue line from east to west and entering the Nashwauk River in the top left-hand corner of this image. Then in the 1900s, the dam was built along with its accompanying head pond, the extent of which is shown in the image here in green. And the head pond cuts the creek into two sections, which is how things currently stand. The impacts of the dam can be broken down into sections, which I will cover sequentially, starting with the downstream effects and the effects of the head pond. Next slide, please. So here's a cross-section of the dam drawn to scale from an engineering drawing. Starting on the left-hand side of the slide, as water flows from the creek upstream into the head pond, it slows down, losing energy and depositing sediment and organic material in the head pond. The resulting stagnation of water leads to abnormal temperature fluctuations and the formation of algal blooms and degraded water quality, including lower pHs, higher turbidity, and lower dissolved oxygen. The decaying of accumulated organic material also releases methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas. If you look on the right-hand side of the slide, the water that is released or spilling out of the dam is loosely termed hungry water. As it is no longer carrying sediment, it energetically erodes the bank and channel downstream of the dam, changing the river morphology much more rapidly than natural erosional rates would do. The downstream section of the creek is also starved of woody debris and gravel that are important for creating microhabitat for invertebrates and spawning fish. Also, Campbell Creek is typically colder than the Nashwauk River. If it were free-flowing, it would exert a cooling influence on the river, which should be an important consideration in today's rapidly warming climate. Next, we will move on to the impact of the dam structure itself and its influence on aquatic species, which will be covered by Nathan Wilbur. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Nathan, and I'm the Director of New Brunswick Programs for the Atlantic Salmon Federation. So, one slide back, please, Adam. I'm going to be speaking about the impacts of dams to migratory fish. It's one of the most well-known impacts. Sorry, one more forward, Adam. There. So dams are a barrier to migratory fish passage, and it's one of the most well-known issues with dams. Campbell Creek in particular does not have fish passage. It never has, and this is actually a requirement of the Federal Fisheries Act. Another impact of the dam is that it disrupts water and the way the stream functions and sediment flow. Next slide, please. So Campbell Creek is actually the first major tributary, nice cold water brook that fish encounter on their way up the Nashwauk from the St. John River or Wolustoq. The Nashwauk is quite a large watershed. It's about 1,700 square kilometers. And of course, we all know where the mouth of the Nashwauk is as it flows in through the north side of Fredericton. So here, this map just helps orient you to show you where Campbell Creek is and where the dam is located. Next slide, please. Fish passage is actually a major issue in the Nashwauk watershed. A culvert bridge fish passage survey by the Nashwauk Watershed Association actually showed that 68% of stream crossings in the watershed are barriers to fish. Now, most of these are on very, very small systems. So Campbell Creek would actually be considered one of, if not the largest blockage to fish passage, blocking a huge amount of habitat. So what that means is that it's a high priority for removal for the productivity of the watershed. Barriers to fish passage reduce productive habitat. They starve the upstream reaches of marine-derived nutrients. And the best example I have is that, I guess what would come to mind for the general public with marine-derived nutrients is Pacific salmon. When they go up the rivers and they die in the thousands and their bodies decompose. But we don't have Pacific salmon here, but we do have other migratory species like alewives and blueback herring and sea lamprey that do bring a lot of nutrients in from the marine environment. And also barriers to fish passage lead to fish population decline. You know this. Next slide, please. So restoring fish habitat for migratory species, fish movement in response to barrier removal, it's very well understood, it's well researched, well studied, and findings show that improvement is immediate with fish migration patterns being reestablished almost right away during the next migratory period. And in this slide, we have several migratory species that are present on the Nashwauk and St. John River system, and a couple of them are actually species at risk, the American eel and Atlantic salmon. Next slide. I'll speak specifically about Atlantic salmon and American eel species at risk. So Atlantic salmon are certainly very culturally important to the Wolastoqey and also other people of the region. It's a cultural symbol for all people of the region and the ecosystem. And migratory species like salmon need access to cold, clean, free-flowing water, and streams like Campbell Creek certainly provide this critical habitat for spawning, rearing, and thermal refugia throughout the summer, helping rivers like the Nashwauk be more resilient to climate change. So we have electrofished in the lower end of Campbell Creek below the dam. We've actually found juvenile salmon and American eel, the two species at risk below the dam. So they are using the brook. And Atlantic salmon in the Outer Bay of Fundy are a species at risk, and so are the American eel. And DFO's, the Fisheries and Oceans Canada, has completed a recovery potential assessment for salmon, and they've identified that dams are the greatest freshwater threat on the St. John River system. And the Nashwauk, among those, is the largest producing tributary below Mactaquac, and it is the priority salmon river for recovery. So I guess the take-home message there is that dam removal and a naturally functioning ecosystem in Campbell Creek will provide an immediate benefit to wild Atlantic salmon and other migratory species in great need of help. And my organization, the Atlantic Salmon Federation, we've been part of many, many, many dam removals in Maine and New England. And I can say with certainty that the communities have really embraced the dam removals in their communities, and they see the benefits firsthand. They see the migratory species, they see the stream functioning naturally. And I'd like to instill the message that you should be excited and positive and motivated for this project to be a real success. It's a really good news story, and we've showed that we can all come together as stakeholders and Indigenous groups and the municipality to make it happen. So I'll hand it back to Natalie for another couple of slides.
Thanks, Nathan. So let's take a look at what will happen when the head pond is drained. Going back to this reference map here that we have of the river, there will be two immediate impacts to draining of the dam. Firstly, there will be restoration of through flow of the river, accompanied by downstream transport of sediments and organic materials. And secondly, draining the head pond will expose previously inundated stream bank area, which we will restore as part of our management plan. The potentially exposed stream bank area is shown here in yellow in the slide with the stippled pattern. Next slide, please. So our approach to this restoration project from the outset is a monitor and mitigate strategy aimed at optimizing the ecological net gain from this project. And this involves, as Jill mentioned, water quality monitoring prior to and post dam drainage and removal in order to measure the ecosystem's response to the changes that we've proposed. When the dam is drained, there will be measures taken to mitigate impacts on the ecosystem during this transitional period, including gently draining the head pond by using gravity siphons, which will reduce the shock to aquatic organisms up and downstream of the dam, and also mitigate the potential impact of any accumulated sediments that might be flushed out of the dam. Although we don't expect there to be much accumulated sediments, as Jill already said, the dam has been flushed out twice before in recent years. Immediately after draining the head pond this year, we will allow the banks to restabilize and vegetate naturally. And following this in 2021, we will enhance ecological recovery through reshaping and vegetation of the newly exposed banks as is needed, using native vegetation and plants from our own established seed bank and nursery. Next slide, please. So in summary, restoring Campbell Creek will result in some important gains to the local ecosystem and its community, including increasing aquatic connectivity and habitat, improving water quality, reducing downstream erosion, and ultimately restoring ecological function to the local ecosystem. Thank you. And I think I hand over to Jody from here.
Yeah, thank you. I guess thanks to everybody involved to date so far and their contributions. I guess there's a ton of information from all the different sources and folks involved that we've utilized and learning as we move forward. So for everyone, I guess my name is Jody Boone. I'm a project engineer with the Engineering Operations Department. Next slide. So today I'm going to give a recent history on the Campbell Creek Dam, options explored to date, a quick summary of the condition report completed, and finally an action plan moving forward. So the city acquired the dam, I believe actually in 1986, and it was purposely drained, as mentioned before, in 1995. We're not sure why they drained it, but I'm going to provide some pictures here in a minute that'll help show a little bit of a timeline of what we've seen. So we received a call, I guess, in August of 2016 that the control structure had failed and water was draining out of the dam. Of course, we monitored the drainage of the head pond. It was completed in early September 2016. Once it was completed, I guess as previously mentioned as well, there's the other groups have started picking up some baseline data. Along with us, we completed some survey and started talking to the different environmental agencies. And in 2017, we noticed on site the revegetation of the previously underwater parts was pretty prominent. And I guess finally in 2017, in November, the head pond was recreated, which I guess I'll show here in a bit as well. So next slide. In 1995, we were lucky enough to have this photo. You can see the construction joints that would, I guess we determined that were typical deterioration. So I guess the things to look at there's a big one kind of across the middle. The stem going down on the right side of the dam would have been the control structure. And then on the left-hand side, I guess a bit of an interesting fact, the square down at the bottom is actually the inlet pipes that provided the drinking water and the water that run the mill. And then you can see some of the deterioration there on the left-hand side of the dam towards the bank. So next slide. Again, I guess it was filled in after 1995. So in 2016, this photo was taken directly after the head pond was drained. You'll notice the advanced deterioration and spalling of concrete along the construction joints compared to the 95 photo. There's also some additional joints showing deterioration. The timber to the right you see on there actually was actually a repair done in the 1940s. We think around 1948 that was a result of a previous failure of the dam. So I guess that had shown that there are some weaknesses along the dam from the original construction. You can also see, I guess, on the right, the streamline that was originally there at the bottom, and you can see the remnants of a few previous dams. And finally, on this photo, I guess it's good to note the mud bottom that existed directly after the drainage. Next slide, please. So this photo was one Sean and I were on site in October in 2017. I guess you'll notice what we felt to be significant natural vegetation on the former banks of the stream. Next slide. In this photo, you'll see down at the bottom left-hand side is actually the failed control structure. Actually, I guess it got adjusted whenever we moved it. Is actually to the left of that circle. You can see where there's actually a little square wooden structure at the bottom where the water is. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Adam. And that's where the control structure is that failed. Now, we water backed up to the top of the dam in November. We received a call again, and we had a consultant send an underwater drone out, and they noted the vandalism that's in the picture there on the right-hand side, which of course is a road closed to through traffic street sign. And if you have a keen eye, you can see all the little dots around the edges are actually screws that are screwed into the wood that's cast into the concrete. So next slide, please. So I guess over the years, there have been some options considered. One of the first ones that I know of was hydroelectricity assessment. It indicated that there was not a large enough consistent flow. The dam would need to be repaired before anything was installed, along with any environmental considerations. So basically the report concluded that we would need to upgrade the dam, and without a totally reliable source of water, and a good example, I guess, would be this summer with some intermittent large rain events, but generally the summer's been pretty dry. It's not necessarily a viable option. Just for the fullness of looking at different options, a do nothing option leaves a liability to the city with respect to public visiting the site, access to the site, potential collapse, and the lack of water control structure as required by code. The next thing we looked at was a repair as is solution. So it's basically, I guess, similar to working on a house. So if you do an upgrade in your home, you're required to upgrade it to the existing standards or the standards of the day. So the second that we get into any construction repaired as is, we have to bring the dam to the current codes and standards. So, which I guess is the next point. So repairing to the current design standards would be the Canadian Dam Association standard. So they have a significant requirement above what exists on the site today, and that would make it a very large project. So there would be need also for additional work to include any environmental concerns such as fish passage. And finally, dam removal, whether it be a full or partial removal, would be an environmentally and economically viable option. Next slide, please. So in 2014, we had a consultant report completed that they did both a visual and core sample inspection, so they could inspect the interior concrete as well. We were hoping, I guess, to see any repairs that might be throughout the dam. So basically, I guess in summary, the report observed deterioration of the stability of the concrete condition. It included erosion and seepage around the dam, which has been accelerating quickly. You can see that in the photos on the right-hand side there, where the bottom of the water runs through the dam and is pulling concrete away, and further exposes it to freeze-thaw cycles. So they also commented on all the options on the last slide, as well as providing some basic input to the guidelines that would be required from the Canadian Dam Association. This would be things like hydraulic capacity, structural overturning movements, and seismic requirements, just to mention a few. Finally, they commented on the safety items. So that included any upstream or downstream problems. People going out on the dam, possibly falling off. So there's a bit of a public safety liability there as well. So utilizing all the information provided to date, along with the assistance of the groups that have all presented here today, we have a bit of a plan of action going forward. So a full dam removal option has been chosen. This means that the dam will be fully removed from within the stream. Doesn't necessarily mean that the full dam will be removed from site. Depending on further design, some of the site may remain in place. This option will reduce any future maintenance and operation costs, along with reinstating fish passage and promoting healthy environment, as outlined by the previous presentations. Sorry. Late this summer, we'll be completing a drawdown of the head pond using a siphon to mitigate any environmental concerns and be removing the blockage. We have reached out to the environmental agencies and received approval on this process. We will be collecting additional data once the drawdown is complete and completing the detailed design and acquiring any permitting required for construction 2021. I guess finally, I'll reiterate that there will be a public information session online Thursday, July 23rd, hosted by the Nashwauk Watershed Association. So I guess open up any questions.
Thank you very much, everybody, for that detailed presentation and the PowerPoint. Are there any questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the great presentation. This does have the possibility to potential to be a very good news story. Obviously, there'll be some that won't be happy with it in the community and due to its heritage value and what it's meant to the community over the years. So I'm glad they mentioned the placard and the designation that'll go along with it. Now, we were kind of in this same sort of spot in 2008, and then the province walked away from the project. So I guess I got 3 questions, and I'll pose those probably to Sean Lee, probably the best to answer. Is there potentially anything that you could see that would take this project off the rails, and much like the last one? Second question, because I know questions that were asked previously, and I'm sure we'll get them again. What would be the cost to restore the dam in your estimate? And lastly, was there ever any consideration, or why would we not consider selling this to adjacent landowner or some private citizen? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. So I guess from the questions that you'd raised there, so the cost to rehab the dam, I think the estimates we have in place right now are between $2 and $3 million, and so that would be essentially constructing a new dam just above the existing dam, or integrating into the existing dam, so that you'd have the fish passages that would be available, because that would be a requirement under the dam guidelines, but also it would deal with the seismic loading. So essentially, you would be building a new dam just immediately above it. The third question you had there with respect to why not just sell it to if there's another interested party that would like to purchase the dam. I guess one of the issues we have is the dam is in a state of disrepair now. So we are the owners of a dam that's failed from a functional perspective and from a structural perspective. So from the functional perspective, I guess I'm talking to the fact that the control gate and our ability to raise and lower water has been severed, and we can't do that anymore. From a structural perspective, we know that the cracks and stuff that Jody had shown in his presentation are getting worse, and we're seeing leakage through the dam. So the overall dam itself is in a structural state of disrepair, and there'd be worry about a catastrophic failure. So if we have a willing group of partners right now who are in a situation where they can bring it forward and help us remove the dam, and then open up the watercourse to fish passage and to greater environmental needs. If it were to go into private hands or so, that may be left and not able to proceed. It would also put a large burden on whoever would be the future owner of the dam. And Deputy Mayor, I might get you to re-ask the first question again.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I guess I was just wondering if there's anything, aside from financial contributions that could put this off the rails, like if something could happen between now and 2021 where we in the same position where we're not able to proceed.
I guess over the last number of years, since the dam drained and then filled again, we have done a lot of work on the whole area. We looked at the habitat, we looked at the species that are at risk in the area. We've kind of tried to cross as many of the T's and dot as many of the I's as we can to bring this project forward. So there's always going to be complications with any type of project like this, but I think there's nothing that would be unsurmountable to move forward and remove the dam moving into 2021.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Being none, thank you very much, Sean, and Jillian, Caleb, Nathan. I don't think Tim was there, and Jody. Thanks for that presentation, and we look forward to moving this along. This will be an ecological benefit to the St. John River and the Nashwauk and the area, and it's great that the partnerships that are there with the Maliseet Nation Conservation Council, the Nashwauk Watershed, the Atlantic Salmon Federation, St. Mary's First Nation, Wolastoqey Nation in New Brunswick, and the city. So it's about partnerships and looking after the environment. So good luck with the public presentations or the sessions, and good luck with the work as we move forward. Thank you. We'll move on to 10.2, Code of Conduct Bylaw, and we're going to have a presentation by our own Councillor John McDermott and Jeff Trail. And John, I'm sure in your comments, you're going to tell the public what this is all about. So go
Great.
for it.
Thanks, Your Worship. So Jeff Trail and I are going to cover, I guess, some of the issues. Next slide, please. We're going to talk about the history of it, why we're drafting it. We'll look at some of the high-level points of the code, and then we'll finish up, I guess, with the council discussion. There is a resolution attached to it. I guess from a historical point of view, or why we're here, is that there was new provincial legislation in 2017, the Local Governments Act, that required the municipalities have a code of conduct bylaw. We did have a document that resembled something of that sort, that elements have been integrated into this, but it really wasn't as robust as it needed to be. It was brought to the Governance Committee and in 2019 research began. The original timeline was to bring this to council in March, but unfortunately COVID-19 intervened. And I should say in that research process, there was a fair amount of looking at other jurisdictions, other municipalities, what they were doing, and looking for some of the best practices, but also looking for codes that are actually easy to understand and comprehensible, which can be a challenge sometimes when you're creating a bylaw. As COVID restrictions were lifted, council had 2 workshops where we learned about and provided feedback on key elements of the code. And that feedback proved to be actually quite valuable and helped shape the final draft before you, I guess, penultimate draft before you. Next slide. So the highlights of the code. The highlights of the code include the values and principles that underpin it, the ethics rules that govern council's conduct, our behavior to each other, our behavior to residents, our behavior to staff, our use of property and resources. So those things that are either given to us, like our iPads and some other things. Actually, I think the iPad is probably the only thing that we're using. But also corporate resources and our ability to use those. Our use of communication tools, email as well as social media, and obviously ethic rules around our conduct. And then it lays out an informal and a formal complaint process, which has with it, unlike policies in the past, actual sanctions. So I'm going to start into some of the details on it, primarily the values and principles. I'd like to draw you to the resolution, where I guess it's not the resolution, but it's the preamble at the beginning of the bylaw. And there are a number of whereases. And one of them is, and whereas the adoption of a code of conduct establishes a common understanding and shared expectation for how members of council should conduct themselves individually while carrying out their responsibilities, and as a collective decision-making body. And council, we are that collective decision-making body. And it's incumbent on each of us to uphold and to adhere to certain values and principles. We're an amalgam of different backgrounds. We have lived different lives, and each of us come to this position through our own unique path. Collectively, we bring to council perspectives drawn from these individual life experiences. Despite the varied roads taken to office, residents expect that we will act honorably and with integrity and respect in our dealings with staff, residents, and with each other. Individually and as a council, we deserve to be held accountable for our actions and decisions. And there's an expectation that despite each of our own life experiences, we will work collaboratively as community leaders in protecting the public interest. None of this will have value unless we are as transparent, open, and engaged as possible in our decision-making processes and how we conduct ourselves in the community. With that, I'll hand it off to Jeff to continue.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just point out a few things, I guess, in terms of the sections of the bylaw that's being contemplated. First of all, as the councillor pointed out, you are required to have a code of conduct by legislation. Some of the various topics within the bylaw are prescribed, but the content and the detail of the code is in fact your document. So by having completed the workshops and gathered the input, we are at a stage where we can present what we think is a reasonable final version. The first piece that is required is the set of values. And this council has identified integrity, respect, accountability, collaboration, and transparency as being those fundamental pieces. Next slide, please. Sections 7 through 10 of the proposed bylaw speak to the ethical rules of governing conduct. And I won't read all of these, but I'll highlight a handful, touching on respecting the decision-making process, the confidentiality of information, the influence, improper use of influence, the use of city property, resources, and services. One that's very topical, I think, in today's age, social media usage, and I think very importantly, respectful interactions with colleagues, employees, and the public. Next slide, please. The bylaw will contain considerable detail around how complaints are handled. And we've identified a couple of different streams. There's an informal process, which would allow for relatively easy resolution by discussion, and a more formal process, which would require a written and documented complaint, a first assessment at the mayor or deputy mayor level, which is to be endorsed by council, and a further more detailed investigative process by an external investigator, which would eventually be brought back to CIC and council for a final decision. That's all laid out in a flow chart that's been shared, and we think a good starting point for a formal complaints process. And finally, there's a section, again, required, which stipulates a range of sanctions that can come into place for consequences under the complaint, successful complaints, I guess, when they're investigated and validated. And they can range anywhere from a letter of reprimand to a loss of remuneration or privilege. We'll also point out on the next slide, please, Adam, 12, that the conflict of interest provisions are laid out in detail within the Local Governance Act as well, and fall under the Provincial Offences Procedure Act. So they are in fact provincial offences. So those are included under the potential sanctions under the Code of Conduct. And I'll pass it back over to the councillor to complete it.
Thanks, Jeff. So look, I mean, this has been the thumbnail version. We've had plenty of conversations about this. Look at it, I think the code of conduct bylaw reflects certain community expectations, and knowing the people who I've shared this chamber with over the years, I know it also reflects the expectations of councillors. In my time on council, this code of conduct bylaw stands out as a fairly unique piece of legislation to come before us. Most of what we do is to establish how the city as a corporation operates. One of our main functions is to provide policy direction. City Council gives life to the city's zoning bylaws, the municipal plan, our recreation, cultural, and park plans, all with the aim of providing council direction to staff on how the city services and assets should be managed to the benefit of Fredericton residents. The code of conduct, on the other hand, is a reflection of how we as a council believe we should manage ourselves. Only council is accountable for the contents found herein, and the strength of the code will be measured by how we and future councils uphold and enforce the spirit of it. So with that, I'll read the resolution, and then if there's any conversation, we'll take it from there. Be it resolved that the Council of the City of Fredericton hereby authorizes and directs the Legal Division to draft the appropriate bylaw to create a code of conduct for members of City Council, which shall include the values that members will be expected to adhere to, the behaviors of members towards each other, the use of local government property, resources, and services, the use of communication tools and social media by members, a complaint process, and a range of sanctions the City Council may impose for a breach of the code of conduct. I so move.
Be seconded by Councillor Peters. And on the question. We've had a lot of discussion and debate here, but in the past, and I think we know where. Any comments? Councillor Erickson.
Thank you, Worship. I guess just to be clear, so we're now going to send this off to legal to have the language turned into a bylaw. It's going to come back before council.
Yes.
How would councillors make revisions if they saw fit to propose such things?
City Clerk.
I guess that was one of the options that you could send it to staff for revisions. I'm thinking that if you have the suggested revisions, you might want to work with legal to see if they fit within it. Because the direction is to propose, it's a general direction. So if you have specific like wording changes, you could provide them to the legal department.
And then otherwise, when it comes back through the normal council process?
Yeah, it'll come back for first and second reading and third reading. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McDermott.
Just out of curiosity, is it a long list of concerns?
I have none at the moment.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. Thanks.
There being no more comments or questions, I guess it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? The motion's carried. Again, I'd like to thank our the governance committee, CAO's governance committee, and it was an initiative that the CAO brought forward a few years ago, or a year or so ago, after hearing from council as well, and it's paying some great dividends. It's really putting a new lens and light on things that we do and some ways that we can get better. And I think the council representative, Councillor Peters, you're on that, representing us as well, and Councillor McDermott and staff. So thanks for bringing this forward. This is, let's say that there's a minimum requirement in provincial legislation, but this takes it to the level where this council feels that we've got it would be broad enough and wide enough that it'll serve the purpose that it's supposed to do. And it's kind of, as Councillor McDermott said, it's a new kind of legislation. We're doing it, we're putting something to control ourselves and patrol ourselves and police ourselves, but also it's on behalf of the residents. So thanks for the work. We look forward to the bylaw wording coming forward in the near future, and then there'll be a process on that where we'll take a vote on that. Councillor Mallet.
Thank you, Worship. Maybe just for Jeff to pass along and staff that worked on it, I feel that document really reflects the discussions that we've had. It's a solid document, and I went through it with some of the changes that we talked about, and I feel it reflects it really well. So job on staff on that.
Good. Please do, Jeff. Thank you. 10.3, housekeeping amendments to the zoning bylaw. A verbal presentation by Marcello Battalana. You still with us, Marcello?
Yeah, hanging in here. So thank you, Your Worship. Given the time, I'll be very brief. As you are all aware, typically staff bring forward a package of housekeeping amendments typically every year. This has been our normal practice. This application does go to PAC in August, but we wanted to give council an early overview of some of the proposed updates. But before I begin, I also wanted to acknowledge that the official review of the zoning bylaw will take place in the fall as part of our requirements under the Community Planning Act. This package of amendments is only intended to take place on comprehensive processes that deal with a number of corrections and time-sensitive items. So this is an opportunity to touch upon a few of the more substantive changes that we're bringing forward. So with respect to the downtown, one of our first objectives is to formally implement the built form design guidelines into the zoning bylaw, and that also includes a design review process. They will now also be a maximum building height schedule in the bylaw to clarify the building heights which were adopted and identified in the city center plan. We are also going to proposing to remove the residential density provisions in the city center. Emphasis will now shift not on processing variances for density, but on the scale, massing, and design of buildings, which is more in line with our new municipal plan and our growth strategy policies. Another item is with respect to UMB and their parking. We are proposing to exempt UMB campus from the current parking requirements. There has always been site-specific challenges for staff when assessing each building's parking requirement against the supply of available parking on campus and where that supply is located given the size of campus. Every development on campus will still require a building permit, but the supply and demand of parking is to be managed by UMB. With respect to hens, we will now be permitting hens as of right within all of our low density residential zones. We first introduced hens in the zoning bylaw in 2013, and since then we've had 14 approved applications by PAC, and all have been without any issues. There will be a set of use rules to ensure that they carried out properly and treated similar to the conditions that would normally be applied by PAC. With respect to Main Street, we are now implementing some of the direction within the Main Street secondary plan by adding permitted uses such as multi-residential development along the trail. We are also increasing the allowable density for both standard dwelling units and for affordable dwelling units. So for example, a parcel of land of about 1,000 square meters would typically permit 6 units or 7 affordable housing units under current circumstances. But with this proposal, the same size parcel will now allow for 16 standard dwelling units or 22 affordable housing units. So that's in the order of 3 times more density than is currently contemplated on the existing zoning bylaw. Also, there's a number of amendments we're bringing forward to a number of the mapping changes for the growth boundary. We indicated to council in January that we were going to be reviewing the growth boundary to better align with potential future development opportunities. So we've done that, and that's going to be included in the package. So that's it for me. Now I'll just defer to Ken to make some closing remarks.
Through you, Your Worship, we just wanted to make sure council had an early notice of some of the things that are coming forward. I think a number of them are typical housekeeping, and a number are also trying to action Imagine Fredericton that council put a lot of time and effort into earlier this year, and in particular to try and align some of our objectives with a more urban kind of development footprint and making sure that that's reflected in the bylaws. So early notice, there'll be lots of time for councillors if you have questions to come and speak to the planners about that. There will be a full public process associated with those amendments that would start with the Planning Advisory Committee in August. And looking forward to consideration of some of those items to get us closer to where we want to be in terms of implementing our new municipal plan.
Thank you, Marcello and Ken, and Councillor Chase.
Thanks, Your Worship. If I was to make a suggestion in bringing forward this notice of housekeeping amendments, that there be an attachment that captures in point form what Marcello presented. I realize it's going to come in more detail later, but at this stage, it would be useful to have some understanding of what the housekeeping amendments are next time. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Dara.
Thank you, Your Worship. He sort of took the words right out of my mouth. Can we just also get a quick list of all the things he just went over? One of you guys email it to us just so we can.
Yeah, Your Worship, it's easy for us to provide a quick summary. Of course, we don't have the staff report written yet, but we can itemize each of those points for you so you have a better understanding. That's no problem.
Yeah, just so when it comes forward that we can just quickly, get that through for August. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor McGarity.
Yeah, just as going through that document, and I suspect it'll be a lengthy one, but this is probably down through as the process gets going, things firm up. It'd be nice to compare what was against what the new one is. So on those zonings, so it'd make it a lot easier to see what we have now as compared to what's being offered to change. Thanks.
Yep. Duly noted. All right, so we move on to our final item of the evening, and we're going to be talking about the Victoria Circle Public Art. And Angela Watson, you have the honor of leading us through this, and thanks for being with us so long.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll speak for 4 minutes and then we have a 60-second video. So good evening. I'm happy to present the recommended public art piece for Victoria Circle. The project was initiated with the city center plan, and the Victoria Circle was identified as a major gateway to the city center and downtown. So therefore it was earmarked for public art in the center of the roundabout. And the project was approved through a capital budget process as part of the implementation of the city center plan. As part of the process, staff worked closely with engineering from developing the criteria for the artist call and throughout the entire process. So I'd like to say thanks to Sean Lee and the team in engineering for their work on this. We put out a national call to artists, and we received over 50 submissions from artists across Canada. And a selection committee was formed, made up of arts professionals, a member of the city's Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee, and a representative of Downtown Fredericton. And they included Tom Smart, director of the Beaverbrook Art Gallery, Marie Malte, director of the UNB Art Center, and also a member of the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, Jennifer Pazienza, an artist and retired UNB professor in arts education, and Matt Savage of Savage's Bike Shop and also president of Downtown Fredericton. And you'll recall that Downtown Fredericton was a partner in the city center plan. So the committee reviewed the 50+ submissions and then shortlisted 3 artists who were invited to submit a design. The designs were presented, and the committee recommends Marlene Hilton Moore's piece. So a bit about the artist. Marlene Hilton Moore is based in Barrie, Ontario. I'm getting a little tired here. She lived in Fredericton as a child, so Fredericton is very near and dear and familiar to her. She is an established artist with many significant public art commissions, including at Vimy Centennial Park in France. She has the Vimy Centennial Bugler. She has the Valiant Memorial in Ottawa, the Borden Legacy Monument in Borden, Ontario, and Volunteers in Halifax, as well as a few pieces in New Brunswick. It's at St. Martin's and Kennebecasis, and that's to honor the Paris crew. So those are just to name a few. And in 2010, she retired from Georgian College's School of Design and Visual Art after 25 years of teaching. So about the art is called Blue Circle. And you have an image of the artwork in front of you, as well as a model that was prepared by the artist. So you'll see that it's 2 semicircles angled at 5 degrees. It's 17 feet in diameter. It rises 9 feet above the center mound, supported by a center post. It's made of aluminum, and painted with blue metallic aerospace paint. It includes hundreds of laser cut circles to represent stars, and it'll be illuminated by natural light during the day and LED lights at night. So it was the artist's intention that the art would be well integrated into the roundabout to cause minimal distraction. So you can see it's a circle within a circle. Each side is the same, so it's easily and quickly absorbed. So there are no fine details to be observed or to keep your attention. So the selection committee felt that this was a simple design, yet a striking piece for the roundabout. So I'd like to end with a short video prepared by the artist, and it's 60 seconds long. And this will provide a sense of the artwork as you move throughout the roundabout. So you can press play. So there you go. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Angela. Are there any questions? Councillor Malay.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's too bad it was done at 10:30 on a Monday night, because I feel it's such a great piece and it deserves a lot of, I think the council's reaction just doesn't represent how great of a piece that is. I've got a question. I don't know if it's for Jeff or Ken or someone around the table. The budget for this piece, was that in the 2019 budget or was that in the 2020 budget?
Do we have Alicia on the line?
And if,
No.
I guess I'll be able to get that answer.
I'm thinking perhaps, Your Worship, we can take that one away. I don't think we know right off the top of our heads.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. Councillor Dara. Sorry, Councillor Price had his hand up before you. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Worship. That is really, really nice. What are you laughing at, Peters? I've had to look at that hairdo all night. Anyway, that's I think it's a really cool piece of art. Will there be cameras or something that will be looking at this in case of vandalism?
Through you, Mr. Worship, we hadn't discussed that yet, but it's something we could probably discuss. I'm not sure. Our other pieces of public art don't have cameras on them.
Yeah. Just would seem a shame if it was ever spray painted or vandalized. It's such a beautiful one. Thank you, Angela. Great job.
Thank you. Councillor Dara.
Thank you. Quick question. Can we get a video made of this exact model replication, but showing it at night so the general public can see what it's going to look like at night?
I can.
Staff can get down, or the artists can do for us, just so when we throw it up on our website, they'll see what it looks like at night and during the day.
I can certainly talk to the artist about that. There is certainly a cost. There's always a cost to those things, but I can talk to the artist to see if her and her people can create that video at night.
Because it does have LED lights built into it, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it would be appropriate for, I would have liked to have seen the video actually attached to the night video attached to it myself.
Okay, well, we'll get a cost on that first, Councillor Dara. Is that okay? Yep. Councillor Grandy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll vote for this, in favor of this, as long as we're not taking Councillor Dara back for another video drive through there when this is all in. If that's
Well,
going to happen, I'm
maybe
not
we
voting
can
for it.
maybe we can superimpose it into one of my
No.
other videos.
Okay. Councillor Chase? Okay. Well, moved by Councillor Grandy, second by Councillor Chase. Councillor McGarity.
Very quickly, Angela, is it made up of material that if it is tagged by taggers, the paint could be easily removed?
I will speak to the artist about that. I know it's aerospace paint. I know she's done several similar pieces where she's worked with paint and metal before, so I will ask her about that.
Yep. Councillor Keenan.
Yep, thanks, Your Worship. I can be brief. When you first glance at it, you think, I don't know, but when you read the specifics behind it and the sheer size of it, and I think what's going to happen is, as typical when we fund public art, we will get some folks that aren't very happy with spending that money. And then I think as they start to drive around it at night and look at it, they're going to start thinking, that's pretty neat. And then anytime somebody comes to the city, they're going to be taking them down there to look at it. So that's my prediction on how this will go.
All right. So all those in favor of the motion? Oh, sorry, we have to read it, don't we? Or do we? Yep. So Councillor Grandy, you should read that then as the mover. You're all shut down? We can get the Councillor Rogers, you do that, then we'll have she's reading it on your behalf.
I will read it. Just before I read it, Your Worship, if I could just thank Angela for her leadership on this. This, and as well as the jury that was formed, who volunteered their time to look at all of the different proposals, and I think done a great job going through all of them. They had a lot of submissions and made a really great choice with this, but Angela certainly did a lot of the legwork going back and forth, and so special thanks to Angela on this. Be it resolved that the Council of the City of Fredericton accepts the Selection Committee's recommendation, public art piece by Marlene Hilton Moore, and authorizes staff to draft a contract with the artist, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute the necessary legal documents to facilitate this transaction.
That piece was seconded by Councillor Chase. So all those in favor? Against? Motion is carried. I think this is going to be a spectacular piece of art and a spectacular addition to our beautiful city. Victoria Circle is envisioned as the major gateway to the eastern entrance of our entire downtown, and this is going to be just magnificent. I guess I've never asked the question. When's it being installed?
It will be installed.
Did you ask that? And I missed it.
No, it will be installed next year.
Okay. Yes. Sorry, I missed that. Okay, I look forward to it. Thanks for everybody on their effort on that. And motion to adjourn, that would be Peters and Price. All those in favor? Against? Motion's carried. The meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, Eric.
Wayne Noor, is there anybody you're looking to stick around?
Already asked it right off the bat. Good call on that.
Yeah, Madam Clerk, I just need Marcello and Sarah Moran.
Marcello? And who?
Yes, Sarah from CBC.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
Hi, Marcello.
Hello, I'm here.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. We can hardly hear you, so just know that. There,
Okay.
that's a little better.
Perfect.
Super. We have Marcello on the line. You're free to go ask your questions.
Okay, so could you describe for me the area that's being rezoned and where the construction is taking place?
Do you have a copy of the staff report?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Because it's on your there's a set of maps that come with the staff report, so that will describe precisely where the project is taking place.
Okay, could I just ask like a very
But generally, it's on Beaverbrook Street on the way up to Forest Hill. Just a general description. Just before the Princess Margaret Bridge, that's the general area, Marcello?
No, it would be pretty much almost to the base of the university.
right,
Okay.
right by like Tweedsmuir, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How much space does it take up?
The total area.
Yeah.
I just put the planning reports away. Just hold on.
No worries.
Yeah.